My next life as a villainess, all routes lead to doom. Volume 10. Chapter 1, Life at the Magical Ministry. The warm afternoon sun, shining on the lexicons I had open in front of me, was making me terribly sleepy. I, Katarina Clays, was doing my very best to stay awake. I never liked studying theory, and even back at the Academy of Magic I often had to fight with sleepiness. The sleepiness would usually win. It was especially difficult to stay awake right after lunch, when I was full and cozy. When I was tasked with cleaning or making deliveries for the magical tool laboratory, at least I was always moving, but all I had to do right now was to read through this boring Dark Covenant. Using my head at this time of the day was the worst. I thought back with nostalgia to my recent mission at Ocean Harbor, where being undercover as a waitress meant that I didn't have to worry about sleepiness at all. Of course, I knew that every minute I spent reminiscing was a minute that hadn't gone toward completing the task at hand, but I couldn't continue at all unless I did something about this drowsiness. Maybe visualizing Mother's angry face would wake me up, I thought, but I was so used to her being mad at me that it didn't work. The things one can get used to. Oh, I know, thinking of the ever-impending doom constantly casting its shadow over me, threatening my life, will wake me up. True enough, I was indeed constantly threatened by catastrophic doom. It all started when, as an 8-year-old girl, I tripped and hit my head on a rock. The impact made me recover the memories of my past life, when I lived as an otaku high school girl in a country called Japan. Those new memories made me less of a spoiled brat, but they brought with them a terrible realization. What I realized was that I was now living in the world of FL, Fortune Lover, the Otome game which I was playing right up until my untimely death in my previous life. This, by itself, wasn't that terrible. The problem was that I'd been reincarnated as Katarina Clays, daughter of Duke Clays, the game's evil antagonist who was destined for doom. The only reason Katarina Clays existed was to hinder the protagonist in her romantic endeavors with the romanceable characters. Learning all that was quite the shock. At the time, I was 8 years old, but the plot of FL was set to start when I, at 15, would join the Academy of Magic. I spent 7 years preparing for that, and somehow, I managed to escape all of the catastrophic endings that the game had in store for me. Relieved, I was already dreaming of the safe, calm life that was to come. I'd even started working at the Magical Ministry, one of the kingdom's governmental institutions, together with Maria, the game's protagonist, who was now also my friend. So far so good. What I didn't know back then was that there was actually a sequel to FL, Fortune Lover 2, Love at the Magical Ministry. In this sequel, Maria would try to romance new and returning characters, while Katarina came back once again to make trouble for her. And of course, Katarina was still headed for catastrophe no matter what happened in the game. After all that effort I'd put into avoiding doom. What happened to the future I'd envisioned? What happened to my peaceful retirement, relaxing on a rocking chair with a cat on my lap? But even though I was disappointed, I swore to myself, I won't lose to you, game developers. I'm going to get my peaceful retirement whether you want it or not. I started looking for ways to avoid the aforementioned catastrophic endings, aided by dreams I sometimes had that showed me a friend from my past life playing FL2 and a mysterious note I'd found which had information about the game written on it in Japanese. To be honest, though, it wasn't going that well. I looked at my shadow, inside which Pokey, my dark familiar, always hid. He was a cute puppy, but he could turn huge when he needed to. Then I looked back at the Dark Covenant in front of me. Dark this, dark that. I couldn't get any more villainous if I tried. I even remembered, in one of those dreams, seeing Katarina, with Poke by her side and the Covenant in her hands, laughing evilly. Maybe this was the game's doing, somehow forcing me to follow its plot, and that made me fear that I'd actually turn into the evil villainess I was supposed to be. But wait. If the Katarina in the game was laughing while holding the Covenant, does that mean that she could read the ancient script on it? How can she be smarter than me? Where does she find the time to study between stalking Jedward and being evil? Lady Katarina, is everything fine? Maria, my beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed friend, asked. You were making such a pained expression. Could it be that you are hungry? Oh, don't worry, I was just thinking about stuff, I reassured her. Stuff? Would that be the covenant? After all, I had the covenant open in front of me. You'd never guess I was thinking about the information on my evil destiny that I got through a mystical connection with my past life. And I certainly couldn't tell her about it either. Why yeah, the covenant. It's so hard to read, you know. I'm not making any progress, I replied. No lie there. I was never the smartest girl around, and I'd promptly forgotten all that I'd learned at the Academy of Magic the second I was done with my exams. As a result, this ancient script that I was looking at right now was completely unreadable to me. Even Maria, who was smart, was having trouble reading her own covenant, since the script it was written in was even older than the ancient script we'd learned about at the Academy, and it used very difficult grammar. What chance did I stand? The worst part was that the Dark Covenant had some sort of magical copyright protection applied to it, meaning that I couldn't write down the text as I saw it and let someone else read it for me. This was why I was having so much trouble reading through the thing. Between the International Assembly and my undercover mission right after that, I hadn't had a lot of time to actually work on it, and the only parts that I'd deciphered were the long forward and the basic magic for mind control. What about you? How far have you gotten? I asked Maria, who was doing the same thing as me, but with the Light Covenant. I have been able to read further than last time, but this latest section only described how to amplify the spells I already knew, so I have not actually learned any new ones. Unlike me, she'd already learned spells from the book and even used some of them. Oh, that sounds interesting, I said, surprised that the Light Covenant wasn't just a collection of spells. It surely is. For example, there are instructions on how to make healing magic more powerful. That sounds like it would be very useful, she said with a smile as the sun shone behind her. Once again, she was the very definition of a likable Otome game protagonist. Most likely, your covenant also says how to make your spells more powerful, she continued. You think so? I replied skeptically, unable to comment either way as of yet. She talks about her magic being useful, but my covenant is the Dark Covenant. Even if I can make the mind control spells more powerful, I wonder if that could ever be useful. Wait a second, mind control? Hey! I shouted, jumping out of my chair. Now that I think of it, I can't use any dark magic to begin with. Startled, Maria blinked, then answered, but you have the dark familiar Poke, do you not? Well, yeah. But I don't know any actual spells. What's more, Poke didn't always come out of my shadow when I asked him to. Could you even call that a familiar? Maybe he just saw me as someone who provided him a place, my shadow, to live in. That would mean that I, all things considered, wasn't really a dark magic user. I believed that you could use dark magic but chose not to, Maria said, but if that is not the case, then, there might be no point in reading the Dark Covenant. Indeed. No point in deciphering this stuff. What's all this effort for? And after all the time I spent hunched over this desk. I was in despair, holding my head in my hands, when I heard the door open and saw a familiar face step in. So, how is it going? What's with the long face? That was Larna, my superior. Since she was here, I decided I'd tell her about the issue I'd just identified. And that is why deciphering it could all be for nothing, I concluded, pointing at the covenant. Larna nodded. You sound like you just realized that, but I'd already predicted this, my superior announced. In fact, I knew you couldn't use dark magic since back when we experimented with you and Poke. Really? We asked you about that during the experiments. Don't you remember? Why yes. You did ask me about that, I think. To be honest, that was such a stressful period that I barely remembered anything at all, but now that she mentioned it, we'd done that kind of experiment. As we see it, she went on, you have a dark familiar living inside your shadow, but you can't use dark magic per se. Our plan is to have you decipher the covenant for research reasons. If there are any spells that look safe, we'll have Sora, who can actually use dark magic, test them. Oh, I see. I said, glad to know that my effort at least wasn't going to be in vain. Maria, however, didn't look relieved. She addressed Larna. I just learned about Lady Katarina not being able to use dark magic spells, so I did not know about your plan until now. Unfortunately, I believe that it will not work. Hey! I shouted. Why would that be? Larna asked, looking worried. After deciphering a spell, I can explain its effects to other people, but if I try to explain how it is performed, I find myself unable to speak, Maria explained, furrowing her brow. I didn't know about that. How did you discover this phenomenon? Larna asked. Up until now, I have only reported on what the spells I have found are able to do. However, yesterday I was told that the ministry would assemble other light magic users so that I may pass on the knowledge to them. That makes sense, Larna commented, since we wouldn't be able to use light magic even if you explained it to us. That's why they're going to call people who can. I'd never heard anything about that. Yes. This was not an issue for me. The problem, however, was when I tried to organize the information I had learned so that it would be easier to explain it to others. I tried writing it down, but the pen would not move. Then I tried to practice saying it aloud, but no sound would come out of my mouth. You just learned about that yesterday? And did you report on it? Yes. Yesterday, as soon as I learned about it, I reported to Mr. Cyrus. As expected of Maria. So that's why I hadn't heard of it yet. I skipped today's meeting, Larna said, mumbling the second part under her breath. As expected of Larna. But if you can neither write nor tell other people about how to perform the spells, then it means that only the owner of a covenant can use the magic inside it. That must be why there was no document giving details about them. A really interesting couple of books, aren't they? I wonder how I could get one myself, she continued, obsessed as usual with all rare and mysterious kinds of magic. But, if this is true, then, doesn't it mean that there's no point in me deciphering this? I asked, scared of the answer. That could be the case, yes, Larna replied, looking disappointed. No way. I shouted in despair, thinking of all the effort I'd wasted on this cursed book. Well, you can at least tell what kind of spells they are, so it won't be completely useless, Larna tried to comfort me to little effect. Basically, she was saying that it'd just be only mostly useless. All this ancient script that I've painstakingly deciphered. All this time and effort. Okay, I barely went past the foreword, but still. I'll go confirm something with Cyrus. You rest for a bit and wait here, okay? Larna said, patting my shoulder before leaving the room. I felt so exhausted that I dropped onto the desk. The sleepiness from before came back even stronger, and since this time I'd been told to rest, I decided not to fight against it. Lady Katarina, I heard Maria call me, probably worried about me. I'm a bit sleepy. I'll rest my eyes for a second, I told her as I slipped into a dream. Pink walls, a black table, and a metal frame bed with azure duvets and blue cushions. I was in a place that I'd become accustomed to seeing in my dreams, the bedroom of my friend Akan. Great. Finally I get to dream this again. Since I started working at the ministry, every once in a while I'd have this dream where Akan played FL2, a game that I never managed to play myself. I knew next to nothing about this sequel, and I needed more information in order to avoid its catastrophic endings. All I knew was that the new male characters were Sora, Cyrus, and Dewey, that Katarina was back to interfere with Maria's love, and that the game's happy end would see me thrown into jail, while the bad end would see me dead. I'd meet a sad fate either way. I needed to learn as much as I could in order to escape both of these scenarios. Akin put the disc into the console, and the opening sequence started playing on the TV. "Thank you, Akin, please let me see something useful as you always do," I thought as I stared intently at the screen. Music played as the twin princes and the count appeared. Apparently, in the sequel, you could also try to get closer with the characters from FL1. The three familiar faces gave way to those of the new characters, Cyrus, Dewey, and Sora. This was just a normal intro sequence to an Otome game, but seeing the people I knew so well on the TV screen felt kind of weird. Akin was the type to skip the opening after seeing it just once, but today she was busy opening a bag of chips. Chips. I wonder when the last time I had chips was. They look so tasty. No. I have to concentrate on the game. After showing the characters, the opening movie switched to some still images from the game. Oh, this must be the scene where you find out about Cyrus's field. This one shows Dewey, but I don't think I've ever seen it. Maybe I will in the future. Ah, this one with Sora near the sea looks familiar. Right, it's Ocean Harbor. So that was an event in the game too. Wait, does this mean that I took Maria's place in the event? There I go again, playing the Villainess. After those images, the screen showed two silhouettes with question marks in place of names. I remembered seeing something similar in the first game as a hint toward hidden characters. I hadn't actually cleared FL1 100%, so I was very surprised when, post-reincarnation, I found out that Raphael was one of the hidden characters. So there are hidden characters in the sequel too. There are two silhouettes, so it must be two of them. Good to know. No. That's not good. Why am I so calm? I need to know who they are. What if they're somehow related to my doom? Raphael's bad end was the most catastrophic one. What about this time? Tell me, Akin, please. Akin, as if my thoughts had reached her, took the controller in her hands. Just a bit more and I'll have cleared the hidden characters' routes, she exclaimed. Perfect timing. Now I'll be able to see who the hidden characters are. Thank you, Akin. She chose the load option on the screen and started playing the game. I'll always protect you, Maria, said the character on the screen. I noticed that Akin had left the protagonist's name to the default of Maria, but, more importantly, I noticed that the character speaking so romantically to her was someone I knew very well. Why is he here? Is it just someone who looks like him? I thought, but the name above the dialogue box on the screen left no room for doubt. That was Cesar Doll. Cesar is a romanceable option. But he doesn't even live in the same country as Maria. Oh, right, maybe he was supposed to get to know her during the International Assembly. And he was at Ocean Harbor, too, so it could make sense that he knows her. Not that I've ever seen the two of them talking. As I kept thinking about this, Akin went on playing. Your Highness, I don't want to have you protect me all the time. I want to protect those close to me as well. Maria, in the game, declared. This was the same Maria that I knew in person. She was a compassionate girl, but she wasn't just a damsel in distress. I guess you're that kind of girl. In that case, should it become necessary, we'll fight side by side, Cesar replied with a smile, showing his pointy teeth. I nodded in agreement. Maria was definitely that kind of girl. All of a sudden, the screen got darker and scary music started playing. Finally we meet. I have been looking for you, spoke the figure of a woman hiding her face under a hood. The name just showed up as a series of question marks. Who are you? Maria asked. Cesar shouted, show yourself. Both of them looked positively scared. They didn't know who the mystery woman was, but, thanks to my past dreams and the note about the game, I did. I knew her very well. Now. The same cannot be said for that young man, but surely Maria has met me enough times to remember me, the woman told them. I do not understand. Who are you? Maria, taken aback with fear, wondered. I must say, it is most impolite of you to forget me, the woman grumbled as she removed the hood from her face, showing herself to Maria. Maria was dumbstruck for a moment, then shouted, Lady Katarina Clays. It has been a while, Maria Campbell, Katarina replied with a grin and evil stare befitting a villainess. I thought you had left the kingdom. Why are you here? I was exiled, yes. And because of you, at that. But now, I am back. Don't come back. I screamed at my counterpart inside the screen. Just stay there in Zyrma and live as a peasant farmer. You'd be able to eat rice every day without worrying about doom. Of course, FL's Katarina couldn't hear me. I have come back, she paused to cackle, for revenge. Her evil grin grew wider. Cesar stepped in front of Maria, as if to shield her. This girl is mine. I won't let you touch her, he proclaimed. You fool! Do you really believe that you stand a chance against Katarina Clays and her dark magic? Heed my call, Cerberus! Katarina shouted, and a huge wolf jumped out of her shadow. Cerberus! Is that Pokey? Okay, now I just have to defeat Katarina and bring her to the authorities, and the route will be complete. I heard Akan say. What? Katarina is going to be defeated. And what kind of stupid name is Cerberus anyway? I screamed as I woke up to the faces of 3 beautiful girls staring at me. Lady Katarina! Are you all right? Maria, worried by my sudden outburst, inquired. Yes. I'm fine. I was still confused, having just woken up from the dream, but seeing my friends' faces had calmed me down a bit. What happened just now? Sophia wondered, confused. And what did you mean by Cerberus? Mary added, perplexed. Oh, I just had a weird dream. I didn't really mean anything in particular. Ha ha ha, I tried to laugh it off since I certainly couldn't tell them about what I'd just seen, nor could I come up with any believable excuse. Both of them kept staring at me questioningly. I realized that my best bet was to change the subject. Anyway, what are you two doing here? I asked. Neither Sophia nor Mary worked at the ministry. To be honest, it was rare for any noble lady to work at the ministry, so it was weird to see them here. Lady Mary and I are both here to help today. We just wanted to pass by and say hello to you, Sophia replied, unfazed by the sudden change in topic, but then we heard that you were sleeping, so we decided to wait for you to wake up. Oh, I see, so that's why you were here, I replied, relieved that I'd managed to steer the conversation away from my scream. Both Sophia and Mary sometimes came to the ministry to help however they could when they had free time. They said that they did that to broaden their horizons and improve as ladies. For someone like me, who preferred to spend her free time sleeping, that was unbelievable. I had so much respect for them. I'm sorry I was asleep. I didn't know you'd come, I blurted out. Not at all, replied Mary with a smile. I'm actually happy that I could see your sleeping face for the first time in so long. Sophia nodded in agreement while she smiled as well. They were probably saying that just so that I wouldn't feel bad. They always were so kind, my friends. And are you done helping out for today? I asked. Yes, although all we did was help sort some documents. We are ready to go back home now, Sophia answered. Ah, going home already? You know, back at the academy, when we lived in the dormitory, we were always together, but lately it's been so hard to meet each other, I remarked. I knew that it was an unavoidable part of growing up, but, it's a bit sad, isn't it? I'll wait until you're done with work. I'll even spend the night with you. I'd love to. Mary proclaimed, suddenly enthusiastic. I couldn't ask you to, you know, I replied to my friend's uncomfortably passionate offer. Please calm down, Lady Mary. Lady Katarina seems taken aback by your fervor. And did you not say that you had important matters to attend to later in the evening? Sophia commented, pulling Mary further back from me. Ugh, I almost forgot about that. It's just that no matter in the world is as important as Lady Katarina, Mary grumbled, puffing up her cheeks in discontent. For all her reputation as the perfect model of an elegant lady, Mary, when she was with us, could act a bit childish sometimes. But knowing that she did that because we were all so close made me happy. To tell the truth, we were discussing the same issue moments earlier. We, too, are saddened that the time we can spend with you has become so scarce. Spending the rest of the night with you today is not a realistic proposition, but we would love to get together with you on your next day of rest from work, Sophia explained as the sadness showed through her lowered brow. Hearing that Sophia felt the same way simply added to my joy. Of course. Let's all meet. I declared, excited at the idea of being able to play with my friends on my next day off. The three of us and Maria agreed to have a tea party the next time that we all had a day off, and if we had consecutive days off, to have a sleepover. It was then time for Mary to attend to her business, which turned out to be helping Alan with preparing for a concert. Go to your fiancé, Mary. That's way more important than me. I thought as I saw my two friends off. Just after they left, Larna came back, bringing Cyrus with her. Cyrus was as coolly handsome as always, as one would expect of the director of the Magic Powers Department, the most respected department of the whole ministry. Incidentally, he also was one of FL2's romanceable options. Despite his good looks and aloof attitude, however, he was actually a pure-hearted country bumpkin who was scared of talking with girls. He even happened to be my secret farming mentor. He stood before us and spoke gravely. Katarina Clays, I would like to thank you for your excellent work deciphering the Dark Covenant. I am here to request your cooperation in an additional task. I would like you to study dark magic. Study dark magic? Really? Yes. Thanks to the findings of your colleague Maria, we now know that it is impossible to relay the content of the covenants to other people. In order to further progress our research, we would like you to become able to use dark magic yourself in some capacity. This would, of course, only be to an extent where no one would be at risk of harm. Would you help us? He asked, confirming the suspicion I'd had since Maria explained about how only the owner of the covenant can learn its spells. I already have enough trouble deciphering the stuff, and now learning actual dark magic? That'd be even worse. But, as a ministry employee, I can't refuse a request from a superior. I stared silently for a moment. I will, I begrudgingly assented. Maybe other people couldn't tell, but I'd spent enough time in the field with Cyrus to tell that his expression had changed ever so slightly, showing that he was sorry for imposing this new ordeal on me. Larna, on the other hand, sounded almost giddy as she requested, try it out on me as soon as you are able to use it. I personally thought that using it on her would be a terrible idea, but I had to admit that her love for magic knew no bounds. But who'll teach me? I asked, pouting. That's obvious. Larna replied, surprised that I would even ask. There's only one other person who can use dark magic in the ministry right now. You're going to learn from him. Oh. That's right. Unlike other types of magic, dark magic was not something that one was born with. It could only be obtained through a gruesome, forbidden ritual, and, as a result, wielders of darkness were few and far between. Raphael, who graduated the academy 1 year earlier than me, used to wield it, but now he'd lost that power. The only two people in the ministry who could still use dark magic were me, who'd obtained that power completely by accident, and Sora, who was hired by Sorcy nobles and forced to undergo the human sacrifice ritual. Of course he was the only one who could teach me. Guided by Larna and Cyrus, I went to see Sora, my colleague, fellow dark magic wielder, and romanceable character from FL2. He was waiting for me in a room specially prepared for me to learn dark magic. "Thank you for teaching me," I told him as I stepped inside. "My pleasure," he answered, slightly lowering his brow. I could tell that he was acting as polite as he could because Cyrus was there. "The laws of this kingdom forbid the use of dark magic," Cyrus explained, "so remember that what you are doing here is exclusively for research purposes as a member of the Magical Tool Laboratory. Most importantly, you shall never use it outside of here unless you have a very, very, very good reason. Now, sorry, but I have a lot of work waiting for me. I will come check in on the two of you later." He left the room, hurrying to whatever other tasks he had to attend to. Not only was he a department director, but he also had some administrative duties in the ministry, which is why he was always busy. The fact that he found enough time to keep a field was more impressive than any magic power. I should learn from him. "Okay then, Sora. Ready to teach some magic?" This question wasn't asked by me, but by Larna. She looked very excited at the idea, but she was as much of a department director as Cyrus and, in theory, should have been just as busy. "Excuse me, Miss Larna, but, is it okay for you to be here?" I wondered. "Don't worry. My talented subordinates are taking care of all of my work," she replied with a smile. For a second, I pictured her talented subordinates working to exhaustion, dark circles under their dead blank eyes. That wasn't the least bit pleasant, but I knew that convincing Larna to leave would be impossible if she was so enthusiastic about it. In my heart, I apologized to all my colleagues. "Might as well start then," Sora declared. Now that Cyrus was gone and it was all Magical Tool Laboratory Department members in the room, he'd gone back to his usual informal tone. Larna was our superior, of course, but she didn't really care about that kind of thing. "Please do," she eagerly responded, again, her instead of me. "You see, when you're using dark magic, you have to concentrate it in your hand like buzz and then let it go like whoosh, all at once," he explained, putting out his right hand. I assumed that I was supposed to follow his instructions, but... "Sorry, Sora, I have no idea what you mean," I grumbled. I'll admit that I wasn't particularly smart, but being told to make magic go buzz and whoosh made absolutely no sense to me. This is the first time I've ever thought about how to teach anyone to use magic," Sora mused, scratching his head as he thought of a solution. Most magic wielders in the world belonged to Sorciers noble families. Exceptions were very rare, but existed. Sora happened to be one of them. When a child from our kingdom first used magic, their ability to do so was reported to the Academy of Magic, which the child would then have to attend for 2 years as soon as he or she turned 15. Sora, however, not being from Sorcy, never went to the academy. Moreover, he hadn't known any other magic users as he grew up. He learned how to use fire magic completely on his own. "How did you learn how to use dark magic?" Larna asked him. "When they forced that magic into me, they just told me to use it. I didn't know how to do it, but they insisted so much that I just tried doing it the same way as I did for fire magic, just to shut them up. And that worked," came his wishy-washy response. "Well then, why don't you try doing it as if you were using earth magic?" Larna told me. I cocked my head to the side, concerned. "When I use earth magic I focus on the earth, like Zeep, then I release it like Kaplo," I explained. "That should work. Instead of the earth, just concentrate on, say, those papers over there and then just go Zeep and Kaplo." "Maybe that'll work," Larna suggested casually. I tried it out, just in case, but unfortunately, nothing happened. I even tried taking a better look at the papers to see if they had changed in any way, but no. Nothing. It isn't working. I knew it'd end up being hard. "How do you even switch between dark magic and other kinds of magic?" Larna addressed Sora. "Oh, when I want to use fire magic I go whoosh, and when I want to use dark magic I go whoosh, he replied. Those sound like the exact same thing to me. Knowing how they sound doesn't really help, Larna, who had probably thought the same, pointed out. Can't you explain it in more detail? I'm sorry, but I've never actually explained it to anyone. How do you use wind magic, Larna? Sora asked back. She thought for a while before eventually replying. I kind of make it go swish. That's just as useless. I shouted, unable to contain myself. But your explanation was also just a list of sounds, Larna countered, albeit with a slightly awkward expression on her face. She's right. I thought, and the expression on my face turned awkward as well. Let's just agree we three aren't the best teachers in the world, Larna correctly commented. I'd never even used magic that much in my life to begin with. I could barely do anything with it. Larna was slightly better, but she was self-taught. Indeed, none of us was in a position to explain magic to anyone else. We need someone who has a more logical, systematic understanding of magic, I thought, and just as I did so, we heard someone knock on the door. Come in, Larna called, and the door squeaked open. I've looked all over the ministry for you, Miss Larna. I need your signature on this document, said Raphael, looking dreadfully tired as he stepped into the room. As vice director of the magical tool laboratory, he was in charge of covering for Larna when she wasn't in the office, and since that was the case most of the time, he was constantly exhausted. Oh, sure, but then she started silently staring at him. Raphael's expression grew more and more worried. Someone who knows dark magic and is good at teaching people. Here he is. Larna burst out excitedly, looking at Raphael's even more worried face. And so I need you to teach dark magic to Lady Katarina, Raphael, Larna concluded her explanation of what had brought us to this point. Raphael pondered for a while before replying. Well, he finally spoke, I, too, am self-taught, and therefore I do not know how well I will be able to teach her. If, knowing that, you still wish me to do so, I will accept. However, Larna echoed, curious about what he was going to say. I will be able to spend less time in the office, meaning that I will not be able to cover for you. You will actually need to work like you are supposed to. Is this fine by you? Tisk, Larna replied, saddened. I was looking forward to seeing dark magic and asking about it, but I have no choice. The higher UPS ordered that she must learn dark magic, so that's our top priority. Still, after you're all done, I want to see it. Larna and Raphael had reached an agreement, but since the workday was almost over and Raphael still had some work left to do in the office, we decided that he would give me my first lesson on the following day. He departed the room, dragging Larna with him, and I was left with Sora, who saw me off to the carriage that had come to get me at the gates. I'm sorry I couldn't really teach you anything, he apologized as we walked together. Don't worry. I wouldn't be able to teach magic to anyone either. I think it's a talent that only some people have, I told him. Yeah, me too. And I definitely don't like teaching in the first place. I mean, I never liked being taught either. What? You don't? I asked, surprised that someone as talented and resourceful as Sora didn't like having things be taught to him. I mean, I'm all for learning stuff that I care about. But if it's something that I couldn't care less about, I just won't bother. I'm exactly the same. My teachers would always say that to me. I exclaimed, happy to unexpectedly find that I had something in common with a person who I had assumed could do just about anything. Ha ha ha, I can imagine. The person who used to teach me scolded me all the time too. What person? Back when I lived in the slums, there was this adult who taught me how to read and do math, he replied, and I remembered that Sora grew up as an orphan in Ethanel's slums. The fact that he was so talented despite never going to school just made it that much more impressive. I see. What kind of person were they? I asked him, seeing the sparkle of nostalgia that had illuminated his eyes. The weirdest adult ever. You could never tell what that nutcase was going to do next. When I was a kid, I thought that maybe that was because he was from a different country than mine, but even after growing up and traveling the world, I never found anyone like him, he replied, sounding like he was having a lot of fun reminiscing about that. I could even see a hint of a smile on his face. You must really love him, I told him, and he looked at me in surprise. That was so unexpected that I gave him the same look back. Sora was less self-aware than I'd thought. "Kman. It's written all over your face," I added with a laugh. After thinking it over, he agreed, "I guess you're right," in a flat tone. Then he mumbled something else under his breath. "How can you be so dense when it comes to romance and then read people so well at times like this?" What did you say? I couldn't quite hear you. "Nothing," he answered, and started ruffling my hair while I squealed for him to stop. "Now that I think of it, you remind me of that person from back then," he continued, laughing to himself. "Is it the villainous face?" I asked, confused. What does that even mean? But no, it's not the face. Just your behavior in general. How so? You're both so weird. I think I'm pretty normal, I dissented. I was a high-ranking noble, sure, but other than that I was just an ordinary girl. He looked at me as if he had problems with what I'd just said, but I remained convinced. If it wasn't for this evil-looking face, I'd be the definition of an average girl. "You know," I told him, "I was surprised to hear that you don't like studying or being taught, but I guess that I can imagine you not paying any attention to things you aren't interested in." In the back of my mind, I envisioned a younger Sora sleeping through a boring lesson. "By the way, how old were you when you learned how to read and write?" I asked, trying to better define the scene I was picturing in my head. "Who knows? I was an orphan for as long as I can remember, so I have no idea about my actual age," he replied. "Really? So you don't even know your birthday?" I knew that he was born in the slums, but I had assumed that he somehow knew when he was born. "Exactly. No idea," he casually responded. "But then, when do you celebrate?" I asked him, more curious than ever. "Celebrate what?" "Your birthday, of course." "Oh, right, I guess some people do celebrate that," he said, uninterested, but to me that was a crucial issue. "Ah. But I wanted to celebrate your birthday, since you've done so much for me up to now. I would have liked to set up a huge surprise party for him, but I couldn't have imagined that he didn't even know his birthday." "No need to do anything like that. I've got it. If you don't know your birthday, you can just make one up." He gaped at me in confusion. "Hey. So, when should it be? What's a date you like?" My enthusiasm seemed to just confuse him all the more. "No, really, he sputtered, but seeing that I wouldn't step down, he eventually conceded, "I don't know." "Pick one for me, won't you?" "What? Me?" I gaped. "Okay then. Let's make it the day that the two of us first met." It was during the school festival last year, around the end of September. The day was, the 25th. Sora still sounded disinterested, but I was really happy that he remembered that day. "Perfect. Then your birthday will be September 25th. It's not that far away. And when it comes around, expect a nice celebration," I announced with a smile, but he evaded my gaze and started ruffling my hair once more. "Not again," I thought, but the happiness of being able to celebrate Sora's birthday won over the mild annoyance of having him mess up my hair. After walking and chatting like that, we eventually reached the ministry's gates, where the carriage was waiting for me. As I started riding home, I saw Sora's face tinged completely red by the sunset. On the trip back, I was finally able to get some rest after a long day of work. I was tired, but I was also glad that Sora now had a birthday that we could celebrate. I spent some time excitedly daydreaming about the various ways that I could surprise him come September 25th, but I eventually remembered that I had a much more pressing issue at hand: dark magic. The next day, Raphael would start teaching me how to use dark magic spells, and I had to concentrate on that. This wouldn't be the first time that Raphael had taught me something, since he had also helped me prepare for tests back at the academy. His explanations back then were always detailed and easy to understand, so I imagined that my lessons on the next day would not involve any whooshing or kaploing. But I was also afraid that learning dark magic would take me one step closer to being a villainess. Not having played FL2, I had no idea how things were supposed to work out in the game. I needed more information about it. Of course. That dream I had earlier. Right after waking up, I spoke to Mary and Sophia for the first time in a while, and then Larna and Cyrus told me that I had to take dark magic lessons. I was so preoccupied by those things that I'd almost forgotten about my dream. Why am I like this? I thought, saddened by my constant lack of concentration, and then started recalling all I could about what I'd seen during my short nap. Meeting chairwoman, Katarina Claes. Meeting representative, Katarina Claes. Meeting secretary, Katarina Claes. Let the meeting begin. Today, we shall discuss the information obtained from our latest dream. Yes, ma'am. I was very surprised to learn that Poke's real name was supposed to be Cerberus. A name like that doesn't fit that cute little puppy, does it? He doesn't look like a Cerberus to me. I agree, but this is not relevant at the present time. Please try to discuss things that could actually be helpful to us. Well, since Akan was so busy eating her chips, we were able to see the whole opening sequence for Fortune Lover 2. Those chips looked delicious. They did, but please, let's try to concentrate here. By watching the opening sequence, we were able to ascertain that this time there are supposed to be two hidden characters in the game. And one of them is Cesar, the Prince of Ethanel who became friends with Katarina. Who would have thought that? The first time we met him, I thought that he was just as handsome as the romanceable characters in the game. Turns out that there was a good reason for that. There was no ruggedly handsome character for Maria to choose so far, so maybe that's why they added him in. That could be. If so, we could theorize that the other hidden character also fits an archetype that wasn't present in the previous game. Who could that be? We have already met Cesar. Do you think that we have already met the other hidden character too? That is indeed likely. Could he be someone from the ministry? If he was, then maybe he'd be someone from the Magic Powers department, since that's full of cool, talented people. But Cyrus and Dewey are already there. Wouldn't that be too many just in one place? Then could it be the Magical Tool Laboratory? But the people there are just weird. But that narcissistic guy is kind of handsome in his own right. Kind of won't cut it. All the other romanceable characters are totally handsome. Sure, but think about our department colleagues for a second. There are people with tons of makeup, people who hide their face behind their hair, and people who are covering their faces under a hood. Even the department director is a master of disguise. We know nothing about how any of these people actually look. Maybe some of them are actually much more handsome than we imagine. Even the one who's always wearing the tank top, who knows? That would give us a lot of options, but currently we cannot even assume that this character is someone working at the ministry to begin with. Where would Maria meet them? Since we already know Cesar, we probably already know about the other one too. Maybe he has already met Maria, but not Katarina. I see. That could be true as well. That'd leave us completely in the dark. In that case, our best possible course of action is to ask Maria for more information. In any case, are you two not forgetting about the other important thing which we have learned today? Hey! What do you mean? Remember what Akan said. I just have to defeat Katarina and bring her to the authorities, and the route will be complete. But that means that Katarina is also the antagonist in Cesar's route. Exactly. And the same could be true for the other hidden character too. So we risk being killed or imprisoned if we interfere with the romance between Maria and any of the other new characters. Any of those 5. But in FL1 Katarina always meddled with Maria when she was going for Jetord or Keith. Did she get promoted as a villainess or something? That would be one terrible promotion. Anyway, all we know is that we are in danger. And we haven't even played FL2, so we don't know what situations to steer clear of and what catastrophic endings to avoid. At least last time we had years to prepare. What if we became really good at dark magic and were able to fight back? Fight back? You don't mean? I do. I'm sorry for Maria and the others, but we could learn, like, a spell that turns everything dark and then just run away while nobody can see us. Why, you coward? Not even a villainess should ever stoop so low. Say what you want, but I'm going to run away. I'll run and run until I can settle as a farmer in a faraway place somewhere. While I cannot say that it is a good plan, at the moment we have no other option. We should at least learn the bare minimum of dark magic to allow us to make a quick escape and then go on living as a farmer. We need to practice. Any objections? No ma'am. No ma'am. I was so tired from the meeting that I held inside my head that I planned to sleep until I was home, as I usually did. However, unexpectedly, I couldn't sleep. I remembered my dream, and thought of the things that Maria and Cesar said inside the game, and the way they looked at Katarina. They weren't even strangers, let alone friends. They were enemies. The fear in Maria's eyes and the anger on Cesar's face filled me with loneliness. I knew that what I saw was just the game as it was normally supposed to play out, but I couldn't help feeling sad. Furthermore, I was going to start studying dark magic. Since the only thing I could do so far was to summon Poke, and that didn't work all of the time either, I was optimistic that I wouldn't become like the Katarina from FL2. But now I had been ordered to learn how to actually use dark spells, bringing me closer to being an actual villainess. Some time ago, when I talked to my friends about how I feared being taken over by darkness, they told me that they'd stay by my side no matter what, and they'd stop me if I was going to do something bad. I couldn't have been happier. But what if I hurt those who stood by my side, or Maria, who wasn't there that time? My kind, hard-working, genuine friends. I didn't want to hurt them. If I became Maria's antagonist, I would end up doing exactly that. I was scared of becoming evil and ending up dead or in prison, of course, but much more than that I was scared of becoming evil and hurting any of them. Sitting in the carriage by myself, I rolled up in a ball and tightly hugged my own legs. Lady Katarina, we have arrived, the coachman announced, and I, still overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, got off of the carriage and entered the mansion. My mood was so gloomy that my body felt heavy. I wanted to go to bed. If only this house was smaller. This mansion is so big that getting to my bedroom takes forever. I thought as I dragged my feet through the hallway. Welcome back, big sister, Keith greeted me, coming out of the room opposite mine. I would normally be happy to see him, but today I simply couldn't muster any enthusiasm to properly greet him back. Oh. Keith. Hi, is all I managed to say in a deep, tired voice. Keith, who knew me so well, obviously immediately noticed my mood. What is wrong? Are you tired? He asked worriedly, staring at me. He'd been working with father, going here and there all day long, and I was sure that he must have been pretty tired himself. Still, he found the energy to worry about me. What a sweet brother I have. Yes, a bit. Work was really hectic today. But I'm sure that a good night's sleep will fix that, I claimed with my best attempt at a smile. No, some things happened to you. Come, tell me all about it, he insisted, pulling me into a nearby room before I could even reply. He sat me down on a chair, with him facing me. So, what happened? He asked. His blue eyes, staring directly into mine, told me that there was no point in lying. Keith always knew what I was thinking. Well, I had a dream. A dream where I used dark magic to do bad things to my friends, I explained, ignoring all the details about the game. To be honest, I can't even imagine you hurting a fly, but now that I think of it, you already mentioned something similar once before. Yet, everyone told me that it'd be fine, and I was happy about that. But actually, starting tomorrow, I'll have to learn how to use dark magic spells, I continued, and then I went on to explain how it came to that, and how I was scared that knowing those spells could result in me hurting my friends. He carefully listened to my long explanation with a serious expression on his face. I understand. As we told you that time, I plan to know, we all plan to stay by your side, no matter what happens, and we will also make sure that you won't do anything bad. What you are saying is that you are scared that, by staying at your side, that would give you the opportunity to harm us, he asked me, perfectly summarizing my feelings. Yes. I don't want that to happen to any of you, I replied. You know, I wouldn't mind facing harm because of you, but that would make you sad in turn, wouldn't it? In that case, I'll make sure that I can fight dark magic. Both I and all of the others. If we do that, you won't be able to harm us even if you wanted to. Then, there'll be no problem, he declared, smiling at me. Keith was almost too kind. When my friends told me that all would be fine, instead of trusting them and forgetting about the problem, I kept thinking of how things could go wrong, placing the burden on them. Despite that, my brother kept listening to me, doing his best to find a solution. Knowing that he was there for me made me happy, incredibly happy. Keith! I shouted, jumping out of my chair to hug him. Since he was still sitting down, I ended up hugging his head against my chest. Keith! Thank you so much. I love you, Keith. I kept shouting, but I know that nothing I said could ever fully express the gratitude I felt for him. He let me do that for a while, but eventually. Big sister. Could you let go of me? I immediately stepped back, noticing that his face had turned bright red. Oh no. I must have hugged him too hard. I'm so sorry, Keith. I hugged you so hard that you couldn't breathe, didn't I? Don't worry, I'll bring you some water. I offered, hurrying to the door, but he quickly grabbed my hand and stopped me. It's fine. I don't need water, he told me, still completely red in the face. But I could breathe just fine. Don't worry about it. Now just go get some rest, he ordered, leading me to my bedroom. I felt sorry for expressing my happiness by hugging him so hard, but on the other hand I still felt immense relief thanks to the things that he'd told me. Every time the memory of that dream popped up in my head, I'd just need to think back to Keith telling me that there would be no problem. Back in the carriage, despite being so tired, I hadn't managed to sleep. But this time, as soon as I hit the bed, my mind immediately switched off and I enjoyed several hours of good, peaceful rest. I, Keith Clays, was alone in my room trying to regain some amount of control over my face, which was still ablaze. However, every time I remembered how Katarina's embrace had felt and the words she had whispered in my ear, I could feel the blood rush to my cheeks once again. Katarina didn't seem to understand that she was a woman, with all that it entailed. If she did, certainly she would think twice before hugging a man against her bosom while telling him that she loves him. Had it been Jedord instead of me, who knows what he would have done? And honestly, who knows what I could have done? I voiced my disdain for my sister's actions inside my heart, shaking my head as if to wash away the feeling of her body against it. She has probably already forgotten the confession I made to her. And to think of how much effort that took me, I mumbled to myself with a sigh, saddened by my own words. During my second year at the academy, I had finally managed to convey to her the feelings I had held on to for many years, but shortly thereafter, the graduation ceremony, the beginning of her work at the ministry, and all the other related events seemed to have wiped my words straight out of her memory, much to my dismay. I was at a disadvantage anyway. The only way to make my feelings clear to someone as unfamiliar with and uninterested in romance as Katarina would be to relentlessly make advances on her, just as Jedward did. Unfortunately, I wasn't very comfortable doing that kind of thing. Currently, however, Katarina must have had bigger things on her mind. Since she had joined the ministry, she had clearly been worried about something. She was trying to hide it, but it was painfully obvious. I remembered that she had seemed worried in a similar way before starting her time at the academy, so it was possible that her recent woes were of a similar kind. I wished I knew more, but considering how she had dodged my questions, she probably wanted to keep the details for herself. That being said, looking at her terrified expression was enough to tell how serious she was about being scared of hurting others with dark magic. As for me, I couldn't ever imagine Katarina hurting anyone or anything, with dark magic or without. I had comforted her about that fact in the past too, but her fear, which must have been truly intense, apparently had not completely subsided. This fear was probably motivated by something that she was hiding from me. As much as I wished for her to disclose this secret, I wondered whether she ever would. Even now, as she worked for the ministry, her engagement with Jedward still stood. She was 18 this year, too old enough to marry. I wanted to be by her side for the rest of my life, but I wasn't sure whether I would be able to. If Katarina did end up marrying Jedward, I would have to marry someone else as the future head of the Clay's family. Mother is opposed to her marriage, saying that she could never be a royal, but I don't know what father thinks. I am too scared to ask him and hear an answer that I might not like. Thinking of these serious issues had finally made the blushing subside. My relief, however, was soon interrupted by the sound of knocking on the door. "Lord Keith, the master has summoned you," I heard a servant say from outside. It was not without a hint of nervousness, given what I was just thinking about, that I left my room and headed toward Father's office. I knocked on the door. "Father, it's me, Keith. Sorry to bother you." "Come in," he greeted me in a lively tone. I entered to find him behind his desk, looking at papers. When I graduated from the academy, Father started teaching me about his work, and I soon learned that there was always plenty to do. This was no problem for him though, as he was as sharp in his work as he looked dull when resting. It was no wonder that people held him in such high respect. "I know it's late, but I have a favor to ask you. I finally received these documents which I'll need to use tomorrow. I've already read through them, but I'd like you to do the same before the end of the day, just in case," he explained, handing me a hefty stack of paper. I was impressed by the fact that he had already read and understood this much material in so little time, and I thought that I had to show myself worthy and do the same. I started to walk out so that I could carefully read the documents in my room, but Father called out to me. "By the way, I heard that you lent your shoulder to Katarina again." The surprise at learning how he already knew about what had happened hit me at the same time as the fear that he may have also known about how she had hugged me. Father was an intelligent and rational person, but when it came to his wife and daughter he often let his emotions take control. I only listened to her worries as she seemed somewhat tired. "I have not done much," I carefully responded. "No, you have. Your support means a lot for Katarina, especially now that she is working." "Thank you, Keith," he replied with a smile. "Incidentally, Father, how are you planning to deal with Katarina's engagement?" The words just slipped out of my mouth. Hearing him talk about Katarina and her work compelled me to ask him that. What if he tells me that he wants her to marry the prince as soon as possible? He cocked his head and briefly considered what to say, just as I was contemplating running away before hearing the answer to the question I myself had asked. "I think I will not interfere with her decision, whatever that is. If she wants to cancel the engagement, she is free to do so," he stated. I was utterly shocked, as this was the answer I least expected. As much as I didn't want to, I couldn't refrain from asking father another question, but is the engagement to a royal not a very important issue? Not really. The Clay's family is in no dire need for that political connection, and the current king, unlike his predecessor, is not the kind of person to hold a grudge over such trivialities. But when Katarina was first engaged to the prince, you seemed to be particularly enthusiastic about that fact, I observed, aware of how bewildered my expression must have looked. Of course, father answered, failing to notice my confusion, because your sisters seemed to be very fond of him at the time. I would say that those feelings look as if they have faded over time, however. That reasoning was so typical of him that I was almost disappointed at myself for worrying. Still, I worry that cancelling the engagement would hurt her reputation, I added, not sure why I would ever say something like that despite how much I wanted for her to be released from Jetord. I must have been so surprised by father's nonchalance that I started speaking the opinion of the masses. That makes sense, yes, but nowadays cancelling an old engagement to marry for love is not that uncommon anymore. The king's marriage was not a political one either. And then there is the chancellor. That story has been almost forgotten, but he married a woman who was already engaged to someone else. It was quite the scandal back then, he revealed. I had met the chancellor, Nickel's father, a few times, but he always struck me as a meek, calm person. I couldn't imagine him stealing another man's fiancée. And, well, that applies to me too. I am bound to someone I love, and I wish the same for my daughter, he concluded, smiling. After worrying for so many years about what his plans were for Katarina's marriage, hearing his casual answer had left me dumbfounded. Father then looked me in the eye and spoke again. And for my son too, of course. Somehow, his words set my heart aflame. It had now been close to 10 years since I had first become part of the Clay's family, and this household had made me happier than I could ever have expected. During all that time, not once had I been pressured into finding a spouse for political reasons. Thank you, father, I responded, ready to leave with my heart finally at peace. Oh, just so you know, he stopped me, whoever Katarina falls in love with, he will have my blessing. You have nothing to worry about. He waved his hand, showing me a mischievous grin. I left, hardly believing what I had just heard. If I am to take that at face value, he knows of my feelings for her. Sure, I kind of expected that someone as smart as he would figure it out, unlike Katarina and Mother, who are, not as smart. But hearing it like that, from his own mouth, makes me nervous. Then again, that also means that I don't need to give up on her. So far, I had assumed that Katarina, forced to go through with her engagement, was eventually going to marry Jetord, and that all I could do was to come to terms with that reality. After voicing my questions to father, however, I came to believe that there still was a chance to make her my wife, as long as I could win her heart over. After imagining that happiest of futures, the one where she stood by my side, I couldn't give up any more even if I wanted to. And I will not give up, I thought, feeling my lips curl into a smile. Work was waiting for me the next day, but I already knew that my brain would not let me get any sleep until morning. Chapter 2, Learning Dark Magic. Yesterday, on my way home, I was so worried I couldn't even take my usual nap on the carriage. After talking with Keith, though, I felt so relieved that I slept like a baby until Anne came to wake me up. After getting out of bed and into the hallway, I saw Keith. Good morning, Keith. Thank you for yesterday, I said, walking toward him. Oh, big sister, good morning, he replied, but, when he turned around to face me, I noticed 2 big dark circles under his eyes. Keith, what's wrong? Did you stay up all night because of what I told you last night? Maybe talking about my fears made him worried too. No, don't worry. I was awake till morning, yes, but it had nothing to do with you, he assured me, shaking his head. I was relieved that at least it wasn't my fault, but this didn't change the fact that he'd been up all night. But you still had something that worried you so much that you couldn't sleep, right? When you let me vent to you yesterday, that helped a lot, so I'll do the same with you. I can't do much more than listen to you, but I'll do my best. I proudly beat my fist against my chest. I'm not worried about anything though. Actually, I couldn't sleep because of how happy I was. So, really, I'm fine. He giggled. Oh, kind of like a kid on the day before a school trip? What made you so happy? I asked, curious. Isn't it about time you go to work? You'd better hurry up, or you'll be late. Keith ignored my question as he pushed me toward the entrance. See you later, big sister, he added, leaving me no time to speak before he closed the door behind me with a terribly sensual smile on his face. Seeing Keith show an expression so sexy that you'd think he belonged to an M-rated game and seeing it first thing in the morning, no less left me totally confused. He must have been very happy. Thankfully, I had built enough of a resistance to handsome guys doing handsome things that, halfway through the carriage trip to the ministry, I finally got my cool back. I can't space out like this. I have to concentrate. I'm going to learn dark magic today. Unable to focus, I thought of Keith again. He wasn't the playboy type, but he was just as attractive as all the other romanceable options in Fortune Lover. In the past few years, in particular, he had bloomed into a man so attractive as to remind me of Nicole. I can't have alluring Count number 2 living in my house. I'll have to tell Keith to tone the sexy down a bit. I eventually reached the ministry, got off the carriage, thanked the coachman, and headed to the magical tool laboratory office. As soon as I opened the door, Lorna greeted me. Good morning, Lady Katarina. I reserved the same room as yesterday for you. Go and learn to your heart's content. I noticed that she had something around her ankle. A better look revealed that it was a chain with its other end connected to her desk. What exactly is this? Excuse me, Miss Lorna. What is that on your ankle? Oh, this? It's made of a special metal that's very strong but also very light, so that it doesn't interfere with my work. We'd built it for Nathan, but today, since Raphael isn't here, they put it on me so that I don't get away and leave them with all the work. Ha ha ha, she replied with a hearty laugh, although to me it sounded like no laughing matter. I could understand why they'd want to put a chain on Nathan, as he had the incredible ability of getting lost within seconds, causing everyone in the department lots of trouble. But Lorna? The department's director? The other employees had so little trust in her that, despite the chain, I could see them occasionally taking their eyes off their desks to check on their boss. They really had it hard. Give this document to Lorna, and this one over here too. As for this one, Raphael was giving orders left and right. Today, instead of working in the office as usual, he would be teaching me dark magic. He was the department's vice director, but I thought that nobody would complain about having him as the director. I will be leaving now. Let me know if you need me for anything, he concluded, before turning around to approach me. Shall we go? He asked. Yes. I replied, and we headed to the room that Lorna had arranged for us. It's been a while since we last met like this, Lady Katarina, Raphael told me while we were walking together. Yes, quite a while, I said, noticing the woman passing by and staring in awe at Raphael's calm, handsome smile. Speaking of handsome, Raphael, with his red hair and grey eyes, was a secret romanceable character in FL1. He had to be in disguise most of the time, but even his fake, not as flashy appearance didn't change the fact that he was very popular within the ministry, mainly because of his calm and understanding personality and his skill with work. He, too, sometimes showed hints of sexiness in his facial expressions that made the girls around him swoon. In general though, he was so busy with work that he always looked tired, and he was mostly hidden behind stacks of documents anyway. Maybe life at the ministry was easier for him than it was back at the academy, where he was ridiculously popular. After he left the academy because of the incident he was involved in, we somehow ended up working together, but he had so much to do, mostly because of Larna, that I could never spend time with him. Doing something together after so long makes me feel like I'm back at the academy, I happily thought to myself. He also used to help me study back there, where he was the kind and reliable student council president. By the way, I spoke up, since today you're the teacher and I'm the student, you don't need to call me lady. Even though he was my superior at work, he always spoke very politely to me, but having him do the same today would feel too weird. He looked surprised at first, but then he smiled and told me, "Okay then, Katarina." No wonder he was so popular. I am going to explain the basics of dark magic to you, but I also made some notes so that you can refer to them after we're done, he continued, handing me some papers covered in his beautiful handwriting clearly detailing all that one would need to study the topic. Raphael was born to be a teacher. What a difference from yesterday's swishes and whooshes. Thank you, Mr. Raphael. I rejoiced, deciding that he was worthy of being addressed like a real teacher. I think that's going overboard, he muttered, looking bitterly amused. Judging from his reaction, I thought that I'd better cut the mister. And so, my first proper dark magic lesson finally started. Now, let me explain, Raphael began. Yes. At first, he explained about the most basic stuff, like how one obtains dark magic powers, which was something I already knew. One had to sacrifice a human life and perform a ritual with some sort of magic circle. Remembering Raphael's tragic story about that very ritual made me sad, but he went on explaining completely unfazed. What we know about how to obtain dark magic powers, we have learned from investigating the Dike Mansion and Sora's case. You're the first person who did it by finding a dark familiar instead. So, please understand that you may not be able to use your powers in the same way as Sora and I, he cautioned. Of course. Of course indeed. Even Larna had told me the same thing before. I didn't know how it happened in the game's actual plot, but in my case I had stumbled upon dark magic without meaning to do it, and certainly hadn't performed any ritual. I just met the dark familiar, Poki, who belonged to Sarah, a mysterious woman who wielded dark magic, and he started living in my shadow. Good. Now I am going to tell you how I actually used dark magic. Yes. I answered, and he looked at me with a pleased smile. How do you normally use your powers, Katarina? He asked me. You mean earth magic? I just go zeep, and then kind of kaplo. Wait, this is the same useless explanation I gave yesterday. A list of sounds. Raphael, however, didn't get mad at me at all. I see. And do you feel like you are doing that with your body? Or is it a tool or something? He inquired. Larna and Sora had asked me nothing of the sort. I'd never really thought about it before, but I think it's my body. That's good, he replied, relieved. That is how I do it too. I consider magic powers like extra limbs. Some of the teachers at the academy also used similar comparisons, saying that using magic is not much different from moving your body. I believe that this holds true for most people. I was impressed by how much intelligent students were able to learn from lessons at the academy. I mostly just nodded along and forgot anything I was told within minutes. But, when I use dark magic, Raphael continued, it's a bit different. It's like using my hands and feet to control a tool. How so? Imagine using a pen to write, or scissors to cut paper. Oh, I gasped, in awe at how much clearer his explanation was than everything I had heard on the previous day. That's Raphael for you. You cannot use dark magic as you would your other powers. I try to concentrate on an imaginary tool, thinking of using it to cast my spells. In my case, specifically, it was a lantern. Try to do the same, he instructed. Given that my current level of understanding was concentrated in your hand, like buzz, and then let it go like whoosh, I really needed this practical advice. The way that Raphael had put it was clear and easy to understand, if a bit surprising. Does it need to be any specific tool? Not necessarily. But it must be something that you feel could help you cast dark magic. Why is yours a lantern anyway? I asked him. No reason in particular. I could tell from his expression that he didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't investigate any further. I had heard part of his story directly from him, but I was sure that there were a lot of terrible things about it that I didn't know about. It was incredible that he still had the strength to smile like that while talking about dark magic. I wish I was half as incredible as him. I guess I have to start with learning how to use dark magic. But what kind of tool should I use? In my old world, the first thing you'd think of when talking about magic tools would be a flying broom, but that doesn't really apply in this world. What about a wand? That sounds pretty magical. I visualized a shiny, sparkling wand with a star on the tip, like the ones that anime heroines used, but then I realized that it looked way out of place. We were talking about dark magic here, with my dark familiar being a black dog who was able to turn into a huge wolf. What I needed was a black, creepy wand, like the one a villain would use. Instead of the star, it needed a skull on the tip. Okay. I got it. I announced after visualizing the new dark wand. Very good. Now try to think of it as if it were right in front of your eyes. All right, I agreed, imagining the wand, in all its details, in front of my eyes. Suddenly, I heard a whoosh noise and something, too dark to distinguish, jumped out of my shadow and right into my hand. I looked to my hand, and there it was, the wand I was thinking about, skull and all. Is this real? I mumbled to myself, and noticed that Raphael, too, was staring at my hand. What? He asked, before going speechless. After a while, he asked, is this the tool you were thinking about, looking dead serious? I nodded, still shocked, and he put a hand to his forehead. You have a dark familiar, and that makes you different from us other dark magic users. I knew that much. But this I didn't expect. The tool you imagined has actually materialized, he continued, without for a second taking his eyes off the wand. I wonder if I can touch it too. Go ahead, I offered, handing it over to him. It seems that I can. But why? What is this even made of? Feeling a bit less nervous now that I didn't have the wand in my hands anymore, I looked at it again. Between the skull, the color, and its general appearance, it looked very scary. Ugh, I knew it. I should have gone with the cute one. This is going to make me look even more like a villainess. Thank you, Raphael said, giving the wand back to me. I would like to learn more about it. Will you help me? I nodded again. I remembered being told the same thing about Poke when dealing with mysterious stuff. It was important to learn as much as possible about it. Raphael gave me a series of instructions, like trying to materialize other objects or to make the wand disappear. I found out that the skull wand was the only thing I could materialize, maybe because its image had been burned into my mind. However, I could put it back into my shadow and take it out at will. I see. You can take it out of your shadow and put it back in as many times as you want, but you cannot produce any other object. I'll have to report to Miss Larna, Raphael mused as he took notes. Your powers are really different from ours, he added, looking slightly worried, so you should be careful. Do you feel all right? After making a new discovery like this, Larna would have started going forward with experiments and tests without worrying about anything, but Raphael was cool-headed enough to remain calm. This was another reason why most people including me liked him and always relied on him. Yes. No problem at all, I replied. I'm glad. His face showed that he meant it. Now we can try to see whether this tool allows you to use dark magic. Sure. But, how? Dark magic was used to control people's minds. Even if the wand enabled me to do it, I didn't want to do something that scary. I nervously clenched a fist in front of my chest. Don't worry. I won't have you control people or anything like that, Raphael assured me, guessing what I was thinking. That's not something to be done lightly anyway. His kind smile relieved me of my fear. What do I have to do then? Dark magic can do more than control people. It can also summon darkness, he explained. What does that mean? You literally create darkness in front of your eyes. Since we can see it, it's easy to tell whether you succeeded, and since I've tried it myself, I know that it's safe. It's perfect for training your powers. Oh. It's like dark magic for dummies. More or less, yes, Raphael giggled. So, do you want to try? Yes. I firmly grasped the wand and visualized my magic coming out of it. Come forth, darkness! I shouted, flicking my wrist. I waited. Hey. Weird. Nothing's happening. Let's try again. Come forth, darkness. Nope. Nothing. This isn't working, I told Raphael in disappointment. He thought for a bit before speaking. Maybe you should try to visualize the darkness itself, he suggested. Once again, his instructions were clear and easy to understand. Got it, I have to visualize darkness. What does darkness look like? Like black paint? Raphael. What does darkness look like? I asked, and he stared at me in surprise before giggling to himself. Oh, right, you wouldn't know, he said, still laughing. Seeing a handsome man laughing like that made me blush for some reason. Would something like black paint work? Not quite. Try to think of, let's see. What about a dark, starless night? Okay. I answered, positive that I could visualize something so easy. A dark night, without any stars, moon, or lamps. Pitch black. It's too dark to even sneak into the kitchen to grab a few cookies. Good. I got it. This is the image I need. Come forth, darkness! I shouted once again, flailing the wand around. Oh! In front of me, where there used to be nothing, there was now a floating dark dot, smaller than a grape. It was so tiny that I thought I just had something stuck in my eyes, but, even after rubbing on them, the dot remained there. Is it a bug then? I tried getting closer, but the dot didn't move, and upon closer inspection it didn't look like a bug at all. Just a dark, featureless circle. Is this dark magic? I mumbled, confused. Most likely. I was expecting the whole room to turn dark or something. This is a bit underwhelming. What was even the point of summoning this itsy-bitsy piece of darkness? Raphael pondered the matter, looking particularly distressed. When I tried it, the whole room did turn dark. It took a moment for this to sink in. Does this mean that my powers are lousy? Not only the earth magic ones, but the dark magic ones too. It was a very sad realization that, after finally finding a new spell that wasn't Dirt Bump, what I'd got was Dark Bump. This is your first time trying it out, so it's no surprise that you aren't good at it yet. But you can even materialize a physical object out of thin air, so I'm sure that with some practice your spells will become very powerful in no time. Raphael tried to soften the blow, but... So was it this small the first time you tried it? I asked. He just smiled awkwardly. I might have been dense, but not that dense. I knew he probably made the whole room go dark on his first try. If only I had his talent. However, I understood how important practice was. After years of training, my dirt bump had grown a bit too. Thankfully, Raphael was also good at motivating people. He praised me for being able to summon darkness on my first day, even though it was tiny, and convinced me to keep trying so that I could learn to do it even better. I'm going to train so hard and become so good. I promised myself, and so my dark magic training finally began for real. It's gotten late, so we will stop here for today, Raphael declared, and I was surprised to notice just how long we'd been in the room. My schedule said that I had to learn dark magic in the morning, and then, in the afternoon, go back to deciphering the Dark Covenant. The higher UPS wanted me to juggle both of these tasks at the same time, and I assumed that they didn't want Raphael, who was already busy, to have these lessons take up his whole day. Okay. Thank you, I said, grateful at how he had not only taught me how to use my first dark magic spell, but also praised me despite the very poor results, making me feel very good about myself. He was an awesome teacher. While we were getting ready to leave, Lorna rushed into the room. How'd it go? Did you manage to use it? Dark magic, I mean. She was out of breath from running here, and had anticipation written all over her face. Poor Lorna couldn't help it, she just liked magic that much. Yes. Katarina is a very good learner, and she has already been able to successfully cast a spell, Raphael, in all of his kindness, answered. It's all because you're such a good teacher, I corrected him, but he humbly refused the compliment. I knew it, Lorna crowed. Despite having done nothing to help, she looked very proud of herself. Now show me this new spell of yours, would you? She demanded. She was trying to make it sound like an important order from a superior, but her expression made it clear that she had just asked me out of curiosity. Of course, I replied, starting to visualize the skull wand in my mind and finding it in my hand moments later. What is this? She screamed, jumping toward me to take a closer look at the wand. Her enthusiasm made me recoil a little bit. I was going to report this to you later, Raphael chimed in, and he went on to explain our findings from that day. Lorna, more excited than I had ever seen her before, was bombarding us with questions. Can other people touch it too? How does it work? And so on. Thankfully, the always reliable Raphael was there to answer her, because I wouldn't have been able to keep up with the ridiculous speed of Lorna's questions. Hearing Raphael's explanation and examining the wand had mostly satisfied Lorna's curiosity. Now show me some magic, she insisted. Come forth, darkness! I chanted, using the wand to make the tiny dark dot appear. Hey! Lorna looked at the dot, confused. Raphael's compliments had almost made me forget a very important fact: my powers were terribly weak. I couldn't blame Lorna for her reaction, since mine had been exactly the same. She even started rubbing her eyes and walking closer to the dot just as I had. Ugh, she must be so disappointed. Ha 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 ha. This is great. Dark magic can summon such a thing out of nowhere. Interesting, she chortled, before starting another round of rapid-fire questions. Is it okay to touch it? How does that materialize? And so on. I was very relieved to see that she didn't look the least bit disappointed. Phew. Now all I have to do is give my best and practice this. And after lunch, I also have to work on the covenant. I, Raphael Wold, was tasked with teaching Katarina Clays how to use dark magic. I already knew that she had been told to study it, but who could have expected that I would be chosen as her teacher? Well, me. I thought that it was likely to happen, since the person currently in charge of doing so was Sora, who, despite his great talent, wasn't exactly the best at passing on his knowledge to others. He learned by feel rather than through logic and reason, which is why, when asked to explain something, he usually resorted to gestures and sound effects. Maybe he was too talented for his own good, he immediately succeeded at anything he tried without thinking about it, making it impossible for him to relay his learning process. This was also true of Lorna, my superior, and of most other people in my department. On the other hand, Katarina wasn't the logical reasoning type either, so I thought that there was a chance that things would work out. They did not. What took me by surprise was that it only took one day for everyone involved to admit their failure. I wasn't sure whether to commend how resolute they were in realizing their mistake or reprimand them for how quick they were in giving up. Either way, I was told that teaching Katarina was now my responsibility. Giving her lessons wasn't a problem for me, and if anything I was glad that I could spend some time with her after so long. What was a problem was the amount of work weighing on my shoulders. This was mostly the fault of the department head, Larna. She was incredibly talented, and she always covered for her subordinates' mistakes. However, once something caught her attention, she had the tendency to focus on that and forget about her work. When the ministry took me in after the incident I was involved in a few years ago, Larna was the only one who accepted me, inviting me to her department, instead of treating me like an outcast. I tried my best to repay her with my hard work, and I was eventually promoted, upon my colleagues' recommendations, to vice director of the department. I didn't want to disappoint those who had recommended me for that position, and I started working even harder to make up for Larna's absenteeism. People eventually started joking about me being the real department director, and some newcomers even genuinely mistook me for it, and before I knew it I was in charge of most everything going on in the magical tool laboratory. Given this situation, I could hardly ever afford to leave the office. While I was teaching Katarina, Larna would need to take my place, which was actually hers to begin with, overseeing the department. She was sorely disappointed about being unable to see dark magic being taught, something that she was very interested in, but I eventually convinced her by promising a detailed report. Just in case, before giving out some final instructions to the other employees, I literally chained her to her desk. Once everything was prepared, Katarina and I made for the room that had been set up for us. Katarina was once a schoolmate of mine, and when I found out that she would be working in the same department as I do, I was overjoyed. I had feared that, after confessing my crimes and my false identity, I would never be able to see her again. Luckily, fate proved me wrong. I was too busy to actually talk to her, but just knowing that we were sharing an office made me happy. As much as I tried to hide it, this rare occasion to actually interact with her had me particularly excited, even though it was just for work. I had to be careful not to break into a silly smile, and when Katarina declared that, for today, I did not need to call her lady, that is exactly what I ended up doing. We had not yet started and I was barely keeping myself together already. Once we reached the room, I handed her my notes and started explaining some basic concepts, even though I assumed she already knew them. A few years ago, I would have never been able to speak so calmly about the process involved in obtaining dark magic powers. What happened to me when I was still a child had traumatized me. It was Katarina who, by reaching out to me, made my wounds start to heal. Things had slowly improved to the point where now those past events didn't bother me anymore, nor did those terrible nightmares. I told her that her powers were likely different from either mine or Sora's, and then I explained how dark magic is exerted through an imaginary tool rather than from one's body. I told her to visualize a tool, and when asked for an example, I told her what mine was, a lantern. Confused, she asked me why I thought of a lantern. Indeed, lanterns didn't elicit any image of magic. For me, however, when I first realized I had dark magic powers and I thought of how to use them, that was the first thing that came to mind. When I was dragged into that dark room against my will, the only source of light showing me my surroundings was a single lantern. I associated that sight with dark magic itself. But I didn't want to tell her that, so I tried to dodge the question. She seemed to understand, and didn't press further. Katarina could give off the impression of acting without ever thinking, but she knew which topics to avoid in order not to make someone sad. She also immediately noticed when the people around her were in need, and she quickly offered them help. I was one of the many that she had saved. As I watched Katarina think of a tool, I thought that such a bleak, grim concept as dark magic did not fit her. At the same time, I believed that she had the power to take the bleakness and grimness out of it. "All right," she announced after deciding on a tool, and, incredibly, something jumped out of her shadow and into her hand. It was a black stick with a poor rendition of a skull on its tip. Katarina mumbled to herself, surprised by what had happened, but I was even more shocked. Words failed me. What in the world did I just witness? I thought, but I quickly realized that the strange object must have been the tool that Katarina imagined. When asked if that was indeed the case, she nodded at me. She somehow managed to materialize an object out of nothing. This was all too unexpected. I nervously looked at the stick in her hand. It was peculiar in its shape, but it was clearly visible and seemingly complete. When I voiced my question of whether someone other than her would be able to touch the object, she handed it to me. I slowly reached for it, asking myself whether it would disappear as soon as I touched it. It didn't disappear or break, and it felt exactly like one would have expected it to. It had nothing out of the ordinary, except maybe for the fact that, despite looking like it was made out of wood, it was weirdly light. I tried examining it more closely, but my confusion remained. I will need help from another department to investigate this further. I thanked Katarina, who seemed to have recovered from her own shock, and gave her back the tool, telling her that I wanted to learn more about it. We experimented for a while and found out that she could not materialize any other objects, but that she could hide this one back in her shadow. After writing as much in my notes, I asked her whether she felt well. We did not have much data on dark magic, and it was imperative to pay attention to the health of those wielding it. This went double for Katarina, who often put in a lot of effort without any care for how it could affect her. Thankfully, she told me that she was all right, and she did not look tired or sick in any way. I suggested that she try casting an actual spell, and her face suddenly turned dark as she asked what kind of spell that would be. I could tell what she was thinking. Someone as kind as her was obviously opposed to controlling people's minds, which was what dark magic was mainly known for. I reassured her that we would not be doing that, and her frown quickly changed into a smile. Relieved, I explained that all we would do is summon darkness, listing the reasons why this was ideal for our purposes. Oh. It's like dark magic for dummies, she blurted out. I could not help but laugh. She looked full of energy as she summoned forth darkness, practically screaming, but her spell did absolutely nothing. She tried a few times with no improvement, and finally looked at me as if to seek help. Then she asked me something surprising: what does darkness look like? I was stunned by how ridiculous, yet so befitting of her, that question was. While I was still laughing, she asked me if imagining black paint would work, making it even funnier for me. I gave her a more applicable example, namely that of a starless night. She seemed to finally understand, took the tool in her hand, and flicked it while shouting her summons once again. Why is she flicking that stick anyway? Is it like an orchestra conductor's baton? A tiny orb of darkness appeared in front of a very confused Katarina. She looked at it and asked me whether that was indeed dark magic. It probably was, even though it was very different from when I tried to use that spell. I was expecting the whole room to turn dark or something. This is a bit underwhelming, she lamented, and I had to agree, as I was anticipating a much larger orb of darkness. I wouldn't have blamed her for thinking that this spell was completely useless, but to convince her otherwise, I told her that I had used it to do exactly that. Make the whole room turn dark. This seemed to shock her. Does this mean that my powers are lousy? Not only the earth magic ones, but the dark magic ones too. Realizing that I had made a terrible mistake, I nervously tried to fix what I could by telling her that she just needed practice to improve. That wasn't a lie either. Dark magic powers could be made stronger through training. My words worked, and she started practicing the same spell over and over. Like this. Yes, very good. Just like that. Being there in that room with her, looking on as she did her best to learn magic, was so fun that the time flew by. Come noon, I stopped her, since she was only to practice with me in the morning, and she thanked me with a smile for the lesson I had given her. All of a sudden, Lorna barged into the room. Given the timing, she had probably managed to finish the work she had to do before rushing here to see the dark magic she was so interested in with her own eyes. Katarina showed her what she could do, and Lorna seemed very pleased by what she saw. Once we were done, I checked the room to make sure that everything was in its place and then locked the door, reminding myself to give the key back later on. In the past few hours, I had witnessed a few surprising events, but more than surprise or shock, right now, I only felt happiness. I put a hand on my face and felt my cheeks. They had risen into a smile without me even noticing. It took a serious effort to keep my expression unchanging throughout the morning, but now that I was alone, I couldn't help it anymore. I knew that this was only work, but I was still delighted by the time I could spend with Katarina. This pure, honest girl had reached her hand out to me, offering salvation, and in that same stroke, she had stolen my heart. Despite all the time that had passed, she still held onto it, and I wondered if I was ever going to be able to retrieve it. I did not want to make her mine and mine alone, but I longed to help and protect her from the shadows in any way I could. I needed power in order to protect her, and I needed to keep giving my best at the ministry in order to obtain that power. It was tiring work, yes, but that was no big issue. Seeing her smile after so long had filled me with such vigor that I felt that I could spend a week straight, without sleep, sifting through documents behind my desk. Chapter 3, Vegetable Delivery. It had been a few days since I'd started learning magic from Raphael, but my tiny dark dot hadn't gotten any bigger. I hadn't made much progress on the Dark Covenant either. Speaking of things that I hadn't made progress with, I still hadn't discovered the identity of the other secret character in the game, the one I'd learned about in my dream. One of them was Cesar, but the other one remained a mystery. Asking Maria hadn't helped so far. In order to get my mind off all of the things that weren't going as well as I wished them to, I headed to the fields. Working on the crops always made me feel better. That's why having a hobby you enjoy is so important. That's some harvest we've got here. What are you going to do with all this produce? I asked Cyrus, the field's owner and my farming mentor, as I admired the field full of ripe vegetables. Same as every year. Gone get 'em to the orphanage, he replied while drying off the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. When Maria wasn't there he always let his guard down, and his accent showed through. Wow! All of these! Back home, whenever I harvested vegetables, I split them between my friends, the servants, and the kitchen, and that was it. I'd never donated them before. Ain't nobody know about this lil pastime o' mine here. Can't go round handin' out veggies left and right. I got this friend though, he done know about it, so I give 'em to him and he brings 'em over to the orphanage. Oh, that explains it. Cyrus was born to a noble family in the countryside, and that was where he was raised until the age of 15, working the fields just like any other farmer. When he came to the capital to attend the academy, he took great care to mask his origins, and he did it so well that now everyone held him in high regard as a cool, aloof, and handsome guy. Little did they know that he spent his free time tilling the soil in the ministry's outskirts. I heard that donations to the orphanage are mainly to be made in money. I didn't know that you could give them vegetables too, I explained, remembering what father told me about how he periodically donated money to orphanages and commoners' schools. He explained that doing so was expected of a good noble family. He also told me that, since different places have different needs, it was better to just donate money and let them decide how to use it. If you're from a fancy family like the Clays be, sure. But just cause you're a noble, don't mean you got the coin to spare. Most folks give stuff 'stead of money. In this world, it turned out, being a noble didn't necessarily mean that you were fabulously rich. Back at the academy, some of my younger schoolmates from the student council said that they couldn't even afford a dress for the ball. If Cyrus's family had to work the fields, that must have meant that they weren't as wealthy as the Clays family. I had been generalizing a bit too much. This also meant that donating vegetables wouldn't have been weird, and I thought that maybe, next time, I could donate some of the yield from my own crop too. I don't tell 'em I'm a noble, o' course. Up here in the city nobles don't donate no greens. I tell 'em I'm a merchant, Cyrus added. So it is a bit weird for a noble to donate vegetables after all. If you tell them you're a merchant, does that mean that you actually deliver the vegetables yourself? I asked, surprised. I had assumed he'd have a friend, or someone else, do it in his stead. Course I do. I done water these here crops with my own sweat and blood. I gotta make sure they get where they ought. Mr. Cyrus, that sounds so cool. I totally get what you mean. I agreed with him, moved by his passion. As a farmer, you can't help but be worried about your little vegetable babies. I always even worried about how people cooked them, and if they liked them. You do. I do. We nodded at each other in an emotional moment of understanding, mentor to mentee. I reckon it's about time we harvest, and then I can deliver on my next free day, he said as he looked at the field with love in his eyes. Say. Would it be okay if I tagged along for the delivery? Hey? Sure, I don't mind, he answered, a bit surprised. Yay. Having helped with the farming, I also wanted to make sure that the vegetables, one could say, got where they ought, but there was another reason why I was so happy about being able to go with him. Just know that, since we go like merchants, the folks there won't be treating us like nobles. And the lil ones always come round asking to play with them. That fine with you? More than fine. I replied with a smile. I had done my fair share of pretending to be a commoner, in order to learn about farming, and I loved playing with children. If anything, a few times I'd been scolded for playing too hard. Checks out, I guess, he pondered, staring at the kerchief I was wearing over my head. Cyrus and I then promised to meet on our next free day to deliver the vegetables to the orphanage. Having that to look forward to made me feel much better about all the stuff that was going wrong in my life. I was very excited at the idea of this new experience pretending to be a merchant and going to the orphanage. I had been to an orphanage before, but that was for official visits as part of the Clay's family. Only the most well-behaved, slightly older children had come to see us, and they were all very stiff, since they knew they were dealing with nobles. They had also cleaned up the place and only showed us around the best parts, probably to give us a good impression. In a sense, my next one was going to be my first proper visit to the orphanage. After graduating from the academy and starting to work at the ministry, I realized how little I knew about this world surrounding me. With so little knowledge, even if I managed to escape death and imprisonment and was exiled from the kingdom, I wouldn't be able to make it by myself. So far, I'd only been able to enjoy the fields and the harbor as a pretend commoner, but now I needed to see the city as a whole, including the orphanage. I didn't want to be a spoiled, pampered noble lady who knew nothing about real life. I wanted to be able to hold my own in this tough world, and in order to do that I needed more knowledge and more experience, as a commoner and as a farmer. This vegetable delivery is the perfect chance. I was so grateful to Cyrus that I wanted to thank him in some way. My usual go-to-thank you gifts were sweets, which he didn't like that much, and vegetables, which he had no shortage of. Oh, that's right. He'd probably like it if I invited Maria. I'm sure he'd enjoy chatting with her while we go and deliver those vegetables, and they'll have a lot of opportunities to talk there, as opposed to here in the fields. Perfect. I'll go with that. Before long, it was time to go to the orphanage with Cyrus. He was standing, his face wrinkled up, next to 3 carriages lit by the morning sun. Katerina Clays, do you have a moment? He addressed me. I walked toward him, fully aware that he was mad at me. I'll go straight to the issue. How did this happen? He inquired, pointing at a spot not far away where my friends were happily chatting with each other. It was Keith, Jedward, his brother Alan, Alan's fiancée Mary, Sophia, and her brother Nicole, and Maria. All 7 of them were dressed up as merchants, ready to go. Well, I told my brother that I was going to go, and he said that he wanted to come with me because he was worried I might get in trouble, I explained. I imagine that your brother would say that. Having someone to look after you certainly helps, he replied. As for Maria, I invited her for you. For me, he shouted, blushing. I thought it was a good opportunity for the two of you to get to know each other better. I don't remember ever asking you to do anything like that, he yelped, but I totally saw him smile when he noticed that Maria was there. Anyway, that explains your brother and Maria. But what about the rest? Why are the prince's and the chancellor's children here? You see, I ran into Sophia and Mary right as I was inviting Maria, and since we'd promised to meet on our next free day, they decided to come with us too. And the others just kind of invited themselves. Knowing how busy Jedward, Alan, and Nicole always were, I was genuinely surprised that they'd come. Fine. We can't tell them to go home now that they're all here. There's enough noble blood in this party to run a whole country, but the place we are going to isn't that dangerous anyway, he mumbled to himself while he held his hand to his forehead. But there's one more thing I need to ask you, he added. How did you explain all of these vegetables to them? Don't worry. I just said that someone had a lot of extra vegetables that they needed to get rid of and they asked you to deliver them. I knew how much Cyrus wanted to keep his hobby secret, and I'd never tell a soul about it. I see, he intoned, staring into nothingness with blank eyes. As our little talk was over, we approached the others. Keith, Jedward, Mary, and Alan were all talking together. I know well how much your important duties keep you busy, Prince Jedward, and you really should not bother with such trivialities as looking after my sister. My protection will more than suffice. I would never relinquish the task of protecting my fiancé to another man, my dear Keith. Sorry to interrupt you too, but why is Prince Jedward here in the first place today? I don't recall any of us inviting him. Oh, Mary, that's delightful. You truly believe yourself to be the only one constantly gathering information about Katarina? And don't forget that my little brother is a terrible liar. Prince Alan. You gave information to the enemy. I didn't tell him anything. Wait, did you say enemy? Asking the servants proved to be enough. You sneaky, treacherous. Are you, who always uses Alan to spy on me, really one to talk? A few steps away, Maria, Sophia, and Nicole were talking while standing around some sort of box. Oh, is that our lunch box? Yes. My brother was so excited by this that he started preparing it last night. He can also cook? That is incredible. Not at all. I've just helped out the cooks a bit. Feel free to try it, Maria. May I? It's an honor. We're ready to leave. I shouted to everyone, waving my arms around. Very well. Here, Katarina, Jedward said, offering me his hand. I appreciated how princely he always was, but I had other plans. I'm sorry, Jedward, I have to attend to some matters with Maria, I told him, before going over to her and elegantly offering her my hand, just as Jedward had done with me, to escort her to the carriage. Oh. She stared at me with a confused look on her face. Did I do anything weird? Big sister, Keith whispered to me, exactly what mischief are you planning this time around? Mischief? Please. I whispered back. I just want to help Cyrus find love. I must make Maria sit in the same carriage as him. Oh, I see, Keith, although surprised, seemed to be convinced by my explanation. But I think he's onto your plan. He's sitting next to the coachman, he continued, and when I turned around to look at the carriage, I saw that, indeed, Cyrus had decided to ride on the carriage instead of in it. I hurried toward him. Mr. Cyrus! Why are you sitting over there? I thought that I could help with directions, since I'm so familiar with the road to the orphanage. That's very kind of you, but I think your time would be best spent inside the carriage, with Maria. I'm sure she wants to chat with you too. Lady Katarina, do you really expect me to spend such a long time in such a confined space, alone with such a beautiful girl? I couldn't. I would probably pass out. I refuse, he protested, without giving me the time to talk back to him. I could tell from his face that he wasn't joking either, so I had to give up. I realized that Cyrus was even less comfortable around girls than I had ever imagined. "I've baked these sweets for you. Please have them," Maria said, handing me a basket full of delicious-looking goodies. "Have this too." Mary showed us a kettle. "It's tea I brewed this morning from specially grown tea leaves. Please accept this too. These are some romance novels I am sure you would love," Sophia added as she dropped a large and clearly heavy bag in front of me. I was grateful to all of them. The sweets looked tasty, the tea smelled wonderful, and the novels sounded interesting. I just thought they'd all gone overboard with the amounts. Cyrus was still determined to sit with the coachman, so the rest of us split up, with boys in one carriage and girls in the other. My help the great with work but terrible with girls. Cyrus get comfortable around Maria plan failed, but I was happy that I could spend some time chatting with my friends. "Thank you, everyone. Let's eat." I cheered, and we all shared Maria's sweets, which turned out to be as yummy as they looked, and Mary's tea, which had the perfect light taste to complement them. I was actually very hungry, since I'd had to wake up very early and hadn't had time to eat breakfast. Now happy and fed, we started talking. Nicole was so excited. He even prepared food that we could eat while traveling. "Feel free to partake. Did your brother make this? He's so good. I had a taste earlier, and it was very delicious. He's really a man of many talents. Is he not? My brother can do just anything." "You really love him, don't you, Sophia?" "Of course." "Oh, but I love you too, Katarina." "Ah, thank you. Lady Sophia, please don't make it sound like you are alone in that. I love Katarina just as much." "Thanks, Mary." Me too. I also love Lady Katarina very much." "Thank you too, Maria. I love all of you back." Lady Katarina. Mary. Why are you hugging me all of a sudden?" "Sorry. I could not control myself." "No problem. The food is safe. I managed not to drop anything. We had a lot of fun riding together, enjoying some time between girls. I just have to remember to compliment Nicole. This is delicious. How did it come to this?" Jedward Stewart, let out a sigh as I gazed upon my fellow coach riders. My younger brother Alan was there, as was Katarina's brother Keith, and Nicole, the Chancellor's son. I had known all of them for at least 10 years now. It all started when I noticed Alan's recent behavior. I could not tell why, but he was clearly acting strangely, as if he was nervous. I started questioning the servants, which led me to discover that he was planning an excursion with his fiancée Mary. This was already suspicious, as the two of them almost never met alone if not on official business, and even overlooking that, Alan had no reason to be nervous about it. I kept looking into the matter, and as expected, the aforementioned excursion was to also include Katarina and her other friends. This, in a sense, explained Alan's nervousness. Mary had probably told him to keep their plans a secret from me, and, at the same time, to spy on me too for good measure. My brother, being little more than a docile servant to his fiancée, would surely have obeyed. This was clearly a mistake on Mary's part, however, as that responsibility had weighed on Alan so much that I ended up finding out what he was trying to hide. She had sadly overestimated his ability to lie and deceive. Owing to this, I successfully invited myself to the excursion which, originally, was meant to involve everyone except me. I imagined myself sitting next to my dear Katarina, but... Oh! You really cooked this yourself, Nicole? Wow! This looks delicious. I only just helped the cooks, really. But do try it out. With pleasure. Oh! It is delicious. I'll try one too then. I must say, Nicole, you're incredible. I didn't know cooking was one of your skills. Alan and Keith were eating what Nicole had prepared. He received their compliments without changing his expression, but I could somehow feel how pleased he was. I personally had not been able to eat breakfast that morning, as our departure was set very early so that we might help with this delivery. Bringing food for everyone was a very considerate thing to do, but at the same time, the weirdness of the situation, two men happily praising another man's food while riding together in a small carriage, irked me to no end. Once again, I had to ask myself how things had come to this, and I thought back on what had happened earlier. Katarina, refusing my offer to escort her, took Maria with her. Keith then said something to her, and Katarina ran toward Cyrus Lanchester. I could not hear their conversation, but, after talking with Cyrus, Katarina looked disappointed. I tried to approach her so that I could relieve her of that disappointment, but some of my powerful rivals spoke before I could. They offered her gifts of food, drink, and entertainment, quickly turning her frown into a smile. Let's have Maria's sweets with this tea then. We four girls should ride together, Mary told her, smiling as well. Sophia seemed to agree, which meant that her brother, who was sickeningly attached to her, automatically agreed with the idea as well. As a result, all of us non-girls had no choice but to ride together in a different carriage. Maria, who had been escorted by Katarina moments earlier for some mysterious reason, seemed enthusiastic at the idea of sharing the trip with her friend, although she probably had no ulterior motive. Someone who definitely had ulterior motives was Mary Hunt, who sent me a gaze full of mockery and satisfaction. I could imagine the four of them having fun riding together, chatting and enjoying their tea. What are you spacing out for, Jetord? Come back down from the clouds and try Nickel's lunch. It's amazing, Alan remarked while grabbing more food out of the lunchbox. Seeing his nonchalantly happy expression annoyed me so much that I hit him on the head with the side of my hand. Ouch! What are you doing? Look! I dropped it, he grumbled, hurrying to pick up the food that was now on the floor. I'm sorry, Nicole. Don't worry about it, Nicole replied. Please excuse my stupid brother, I added, as was my responsibility, and Alan stared at me with contempt. It's all your fault. You should have been more careful. I swear, Jetord. Keith, meanwhile, was looking for something inside of his bag. Here, Alan, you can throw the food away in this bag. And use this handkerchief to clean your hands, he declared, handing my brother those two items. Alan, in response, looked at him, shocked. Wow, do you always go out prepared like this? What are you, a housewife? Alan shot back with a hint of sarcasm. Oh, it's just. I'm used to this kind of thing, Keith replied, looking down in embarrassment. Keith would make a wonderful mother. Anyone would want someone like him as their wife, Nicole complimented, or maybe insulted, him. Alan burst into laughter, and Keith shook his head. Nicole, you might have noticed that I am a man. I could never be a mother, and I have no plans to become anyone's wife either. I see. That is a shame, Nicole, dead serious, replied. Truly a shame, Alan agreed, still laughing. My first free day in so long, and I had to spend it not with Katarina, exchanging sweet words of love, but with these three men. All in all though, I could enjoy that for what it was. Years ago I would have hated every moment of this trip, but maybe I had changed. I welcomed change, as it helped expand my horizons. And the catalyst for my change, of course, was Katarina. I deemed it a good time to join whatever was going on. Should you ever change your mind and become someone's wife, Keith, just let me know. As your brother-in-law, I will happily provide you with the most beautiful wedding gown in the whole kingdom, I promised with a smile, and Keith furrowed his brow. I need no gown. And I do not see you becoming my brother-in-law either. Ah, what are you saying now? I will marry Katarina, which will make me your brother-in-law. Strangely, Alan reacted to my words before Keith himself did. Hey! There will be no this inserted audio clip if you buy the software license key or activation key. So Keith would become my younger brother-in-law. Alan. Do not join him in his delusions. But isn't that the truth? You are younger than both of us. Of course I am younger than both of you, but you're missing the point. It had been a long time since the four of us had all been together. It was a noisy, rowdy trip, but I enjoyed it. We have arrived. The coachman announced the end of our trip, and we left the carriage, finding ourselves in a relatively wide garden. A path led to a large building, most likely, the orphanage. The building itself was bigger than the orphanages I'd seen in the capital, but, other than that, it wasn't that different. Orphanages in Sorcy were run by the country and financed with regular donations from nobles, so they were usually clean and well kept. The children there went to school, and after graduation, the orphanage would recommend them for various jobs. An old woman was walking in our direction, coming from the building. Thank you for coming this year too. We appreciate it a lot, she greeted Cyrus. You didn't need to come all the way here to meet us, thank you. These here are the people that I told you would be coming with me to help, Cyrus said, pointing at us. Oh my, that is quite a few more than I had expected. All the better. My name is Maggie, and I run this orphanage. It is a pleasure to meet you all, the woman spoke with a smile. Before coming here, Cyrus had told me that the orphanage's director, the woman who was now in front of us, was the only one to know about his true identity. It was safe to assume that she also knew about us, but if she did, she certainly didn't let it show. Let's bring those veggies in, shall we? She asked us with a smile. Since there were so many of us, the carriages were empty in no time. However, Maggie wanted us to help with something else. Something surprising. We have to teach the kids. I asked Cyrus, shocked, and he nodded. Orphanages send the children to school, but they do not have the resources to hire individual tutors. That is why, whenever a guest stops by, they usually stay a little longer to help out the children with their homework, or to teach them about sewing and other housework. I personally do it every time I come. Knowledge is paramount to a successful future for these orphans. In this world, or at least in wealthy and advanced Sorcy, everyone went to school, where they could all take the same classes. However, there was no individual tutoring, nor were there any classes about sewing, cooking, or any other skill like that. You would need someone to teach you those things outside of school, so what Cyrus had said made sense, except for the fact that I'd never seen anything like that on my official visits to orphanages. Cyrus shrugged when I asked him about it. Do you really think they would ask nobles to do it? That would make the children so nervous that they wouldn't learn anything anyway. He has a point. I know I'd be nervous if I were a commoner meeting a noble. That being said, I had no idea we'd have to help the children study. I will be helping them with homework, as I always do, Cyrus told us. What about you? I will do the same. I do not know enough about sewing or cooking to be able to teach anyone, Nicole replied. I believe I could teach them sewing, Sophia interjected, timidly raising her hand. Me too. I know a bit about sewing myself, Mary declared. I knew that not to be true, however, since she knew everything about sewing. They didn't call her the lady among ladies for no reason. I could teach them cooking, although I'm not exactly an expert, Maria, who definitely was an expert, humbly followed. You two are very good teachers. Won't you join me in overseeing the children's homework? Nicole asked Jedward and Keith, who quickly nodded in agreement. Wow, everyone's already decided what they want to do. As for me. Okay then, I'll go with Maria and teach the children how to. Big sister, no. No cooking. The orphanage probably needs their kitchen, Katarina. Keith and Jedward stopped me right in my tracks. Ah, Kmin. I only destroyed the academy's kitchen by accident. Well, and the kitchen in Clay's manor too, but that was also an accident. I cook without any accidents most of the time. But I can't help children with homework, and the last time I tried sewing I gave myself sutures. Cooking is the only thing I could help with. I only barely made it through the academy with average grades thanks to my smart friends, and as mother always said, letting me sew was a very good way to turn fabric and thread into garbage. That's true. There's not much you could teach children. Is that pity in your eyes, Keith? You should take care of cheering us on, Katarina. That doesn't count as helping, Jetord. I was sure that I was able to do something useful, and I asked Maggie whether I could help with cleaning or doing the laundry. We already have people hired to do that, she thought for a while. Oh. Of course, she then said, clapping her hands together. Why do I have to come with you and play with children? You said it yourself, Alan, you aren't great at teaching things to others, I explained to him. I had noticed how, while all the others were going ahead and proposing to do this or that, he had looked anything but enthusiastic. Of course, I took advantage of that. Sure, I'm not great, but that doesn't mean I have nothing to teach them, unlike you. Now, don't make a fuss. We're going to play with children. What's not to like? I answered brightly, trying to stop his grumbling. Children who were too young to go to school played amongst themselves under adult supervision, Maggie explained, but they really had a lot of fun whenever an adult actually played with them, and so she asked us to indulge them. That was definitely something even I could do, so I gladly accepted, bringing Alan with me because, 1, he had said that he wasn't great at teaching, and, 2, being the only adult there wouldn't be as fun. The others, when they heard that I was going to play with children, suddenly decided that they wanted to do that too. It was no surprise that they'd rather play than teach. However, Maggie told them that they didn't need that many people for such an easy task, and they had to give up. I could see the envious looks they were pointing at Alan though. I'll do their share of playing too then. So, what kind of game do you want to play? I asked the children. I was told that the children often played indoors, but, since we had such good weather today, we could go out in the garden. The place reminded me of the playground in my previous life's school, except that it was covered in well-trimmed, soft grass so that the children wouldn't hurt themselves falling. All the kids looked like they were used to having adult guests, so they immediately took to us. Tag. A race. I won a race. Let's do hide and seek. They all sounded enthusiastic, but they couldn't agree on a game. Okay then. We'll play all those games one at a time. Let's start with tag, I announced, and I struck a menacing pose. I'm it. And I'm gonna get you. Run for your life. Wah. Ha ha ha. Yeek. The children, amused, started running in every direction, and I chased after them. They're just little children. I'm going to catch all of them in no time, I thought, but... Gotcha. I said, putting my arms around a girl so small that she barely reached my waist. She was squealing with delight, but I was almost out of breath. They were a bunch of swift young whippersnappers, that's for sure. I wouldn't have had any problem had it been 1 or 2, but with so many of them this was getting to be a real workout. I have to do something. I saw Alan, who was looking at our game of tag without participating. Alan. Join us. Hey? Me? Who else? You came here to play with the children, so come and play. I invited, trying to force an unenthusiastic Alan to help me. Everyone. Now, you'll have to run from both me and him. The children were very excited at the news. I never agreed to. Perfect. Let's start. Sheesh. Fine, whatever. I'm going to catch everyone in no time. Alan started running after the children, and he was exceptional. He really caught one after the other. I couldn't let him do all the work though. I saw him chasing a very quick boy, so I headed for the direction where the two were going and hid behind a tree, planning an ambush. Hee hee. You can't catch me. Ugh. You fast little. Aha. You fell into my trap. I shouted when the two were close enough to the tree, and I jumped out toward them. Oh. That was close, the kid exclaimed, swiftly dodging out of the way and past my side. Unfortunately, it was too late for me to stop, and I ended up running straight into Alan. Eek. Gah. I heard Alan scream, and I anticipated a painful fall to the ground. That wasn't painful at all. When I opened my eyes, instead of the green grass, I saw something pink. Instead of the flat terrain I was expecting, behind me I could feel all sorts of bumps. Would you get off already? I heard Alan speak directly into my ear, and, when I looked more closely, I realized that the pink thing I saw before me was his face. When I looked around even more, I realized that I was not resting on the ground at all. I was resting on Alan. Oh. Sorry. I apologized, quickly getting off of him. Can't you be a tiny bit careful? He snapped, breathing heavily, with a hand to his face. More than pink, right now, he was red. I must have hit you so hard that your whole face turned red. I'm so sorry. My face slammed straight into his face, so that must have hurt. No, this is. Don't worry about it. Go get some rest. Your legs must be tired, he suggested before running off toward the children once again. Maybe the reason I couldn't stop myself in time was because, as he had said, my legs were tired. If he hadn't been there to soften the blow, I'd have dived into the ground face first. He's always complaining about stuff, but deep down he's a really kind guy. He's been like this since we were kids. I guess I'll take his advice and go rest for a while. I sat down in the shade of a tree and watched Alan chasing after the children. They already seemed to be having a lot of fun playing with him. Alan would make a really good dad, I thought as I enjoyed some rest. I, Alan Stewart, was running as fast as I possibly could. I needed to do that in order to take my mind off of what had just happened. I mean, the fact that I'd have to play with children was enough of a surprise already. I thought I'd help them with homework, even though I wasn't that good at that kind of thing, but Katarina had dragged me into this instead. The situation itself was annoying, but I was glad I could spend time with the girl I had feelings for. Of course, she didn't know this. Nobody did. She was my brother's fiancée, so I had to keep it a secret. Not that I was expecting anything to play out between us, either before today or in the future. But still, just being here, looking at Katarina, was enough to put a smile on my face. While she chased after those kids, running out of breath, she was as lovely as she'd always been since I first met her when we were kids ourselves. Looking at Katarina, yeah, that would have been enough. But I was in for another surprise. I was going after a particularly fast kid when all of a sudden Katarina jumped out in front of me from behind a tree. We crashed into each other, and I did my best not to hurt her, but in order to do that I had to sacrifice my balance and fall backward, allowing her to fall on top of me. Since we were facing each other, we ended up kind of hugging. As if that wasn't enough, her lips even smacked against my cheek. I couldn't tell whether she didn't realize it or was just pretending not to, but as far as I was concerned that was a huge shock. I felt the blood rush to my head. I mean, her lips. On my cheek. That's just like getting kissed on the cheek. They're so, well, soft. And her body pushed against me. No. The more I think about this, the worse I'm going to make it for myself. I shook my head like I wanted to make my thoughts fall out of it and went back to playing tag with the kids. I had to focus on running. By the time I'd caught all of them, I had calmed down a bit. The girl who had made me feel so weird in the first place then had the gall to come to me and say, "You're very good at playing with children, Alan. I'm sure you'll make a great dad one day." Her words and the casual way she said them left me so appalled that I whacked her on the head. Ouch. Alan! What are you doing? Even the way she looked mad after that, with her cheeks puffed up, was cute. I remembered the feeling of her lips on my face and got all fidgety again. Calming down completely is going to take me some time. Hide. 1. 2. One of the older kids had closed her eyes and started counting. After tag and racing, it was time for hide and seek. We were playing in pairs, and the smallest children had immediately paired up with the older ones, as if they were used to always doing so. One of the girls, who looked a bit too sassy for her age, chose Alan to pair up with her. That's one of fortune lover's male characters for you. Even little girls like him. As for me, nobody had asked me to pair up with them. It's not that the kids didn't like me, they just told me that they saw me trip during tag and drag my feet during the race, and they didn't want to lose this game. The world of children was a tough but just one. Since I was totally spent, this actually gave me the perfect opportunity to rest. I would find a good hiding spot, far away from the counting kid, and take a breather there. During my search for the perfect hiding place, I saw a kid walk all alone through the garden. This kid looked older than the ones we were playing with, definitely of school age, at least. That was weird, since the older children were supposed to be inside of the orphanage, studying. Maybe they also sent kids on errands sometimes, I thought while the kid walked away. After running around the building's corner, I found another person I wasn't expecting to see in the garden. Nicole. I called out to him, and he looked up toward me dejectedly. Oh, Katarina. His expression was as neutral as always, but I could tell that he was feeling down. Why are you here? Weren't you helping the children with homework? I asked, remembering that he'd personally offered to do that. I was told to leave. They said that the children cannot concentrate if I'm around, he reported sadly. I always forgot about that, having known him for so many years, but Nicole was cursed with being so attractive that he ended up charming everyone even if he didn't mean to. I definitely saw why he would be too much for those pure and innocent children. I understood that, but that wasn't his fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. If you wanted to place blame, you would have to blame the heavens who gifted him with that wicked charm. He knew he couldn't help it, but I didn't want to see him so sad. According to Sophia, he was looking forward to coming here with us so much that he'd stayed up late cooking, and now he was here, alone, and unable to help. Maybe it was because I'd been playing with children for so long, but right now, to me, he looked like a small, sad child. I walked toward him and hugged his head, gently stroking his hair. Don't worry, Nicole. We'll find something that you can help with. Together. I could feel him twitch in my arms, but then he stopped moving and let me pat his head. Nicole had grown up so much. He was way taller than me now. But somehow, I remembered the young Nicole from my childhood. I, Nicole Askert, have sinned. I let Katarina Clays, my friend's fiancée, embrace my head, without asking her to stop or moving away. Worse yet, I enjoyed it. There was no doubt in my mind that Katarina's gesture had no romantic meaning as far as she was concerned. She just saw me looking sad and comforted me in the same way she would have done with one of the younger children that she had been playing with. I could have insisted, "I'm fine now," and that would have been enough for her to release me from that warm, sweet hug. However, whatever her intentions, that was not something that a woman of her age should be doing to a man in such a place, with no one around. Had Jedward or anybody else, for that matter, seen us, it would have led to incredible trouble. The rational part of me knew that I had to tell her, "I'm fine now." The part of me who had hidden my feelings for her for so many years, however, forbade me from speaking those words. It was wallowing, reveling in Katarina's warmth. Though this whole incident had started through no fault of my own, I realized that it was my responsibility to act before I lost the last remnants of that composure which Katarina's touch had already made thin. Worst of all, I could feel myself longing for more. I knew that just being there, touched by her, was bad, and I did not want to make it worse. Ah! Found ye! A young girl came out of nowhere and shouted at Katarina, at which point I hurriedly escaped her embrace. Ah! You found me! Katarina, nonchalant to a degree I could only dream of, conceded, heading toward the girl. I can't find the other big mister though, the child observed. The big mister is very smart, so he's probably hiding where it's difficult to find. I'll help you search for him. Thanks, the child replied to Katarina before pointing at me. What about that mister over there? She asked. Can he play too? Katarina asked back. Sure, the girl happily agreed. Would that not be a problem, Katarina? Oh, don't worry, these children are way too young. Let's go. Katarina responded with a smile, holding out her hand. Before I could think about what to do, my hand had already moved to meet hers. I got poor Nicole to play with us, hoping that it'd make him feel better. I thought that the kids were too young to be attracted to him, but they were all staring at him with wide eyes, going, "That mister is so handsome." Thankfully, since we weren't studying, being unable to concentrate wasn't really a problem, and, once the game started, everyone focused on running anyway. This addition to the grown UPS team had made me lose yet another position in the popularity ranking. I couldn't blame the kids for liking the smart, handsome, and fast mister rather than the clumsy, slow miss. But it did make me kind of sad. Right as I was starting to feel a little blue, one of the orphanage's employees walked out to the garden to tell everyone that it was snack time. I was no kid and certainly no orphan, but I figured I'd sneak in and partake of the snacks. We all went into the dining hall, where the kids sat down to eat. Today's snack seemed to be some simple cookies. I ate one and a mellow, pleasant sweetness immediately spread in my mouth. I know this taste, I muttered to myself. I'm impressed you'd recognize it, the orphanage's employee remarked. It was that girl from your group, Maria, who baked them. That explained why the cookie tasted familiar. I'd had one of Maria's sweets just hours earlier in the carriage. She's such a good cook. It's such a simple, unassuming cookie, but it tastes great. All the kids are stuffing their faces too. Isn't she awesome? I thought with pride, despite not having done anything to be proud of. Right at that moment, Maria walked into the dining hall, accompanied by a group of children who looked slightly older than the ones I'd been playing with. We made these cookies together, Maria told everyone, introducing the kids one by one and praising them for how skilled they were, how good they were at mixing flour, and so on. They definitely looked proud of themselves when they heard Maria's compliments, and the smaller children were also looking up to them with sparkling eyes. Only someone like Maria could make them look like that. Maria, I spoke up, walking over to her after she was done with the introductions, you're really incredible. The cookies were delicious, and look at the faces of these children. She shook her head. The children were the incredible ones. They all gave their best, she deflected humbly, and then we told each other in detail what we'd been up to. Maria recounted her cooking class and I recounted playtime. After we finished baking, the children said that they wanted to try making something savory too. We obtained permission, so we will cook something for dinner too. We just need to go and buy some ingredients. You and the children? No, that would be dangerous. It will be me and some of the employees. I see. Oh. I know. Maria, there's someone much better than the orphanage's employees to help you out with shopping. I told her. This time I'm going to make it count. It's time to repay him for all he's done for me.